we're going to see plenty of blue skies, particularly across central areas where they've had quite a cloudy afternoon this afternoon. And we could potentially see a fair bit of cloud just starting to creep into the very far northwest. Some light outbreaks of rain later on into the afternoon. But for most, a dry, sunny day, feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 21 degrees Celsius. And you're particularly going to feel that in eastern areas where it's been quite chilly. Then for the start of the weekend, a fairly similar day. Lots of sunshine to come, but still a fair amount of cloud across the northwest with the chance of some light outbreaks of rain. And this theme pretty much continues for the rest of the weekend and into next week. Just need to keep an eye on Sunday. There is a chance we could see some thundery showers, but otherwise lots of warm sunshine to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next big winner on the road in this brand new Alnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. Imagine the fun you could have in this luxurious home from home worth over £67,000. We'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash to make your next getaway a great one. And it could be all yours. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christies and I have a very special show for you. Any second now, we are going to be hearing from King Charles giving his special VE Day message. So watch this space. But before all of that, Boris Johnson, he talked up Britain on VE Day.
I think that this country is, very fierce in its defence of democracy and freedom.
Then he waded into the grooming gang scandal.
The grooming gang? I don't know quite why we don't have a proper national inquiry into it.
He's got a novel solution to stop the boats.
Why don't we kind of do something really crackers like Trump and put a 500% tariff on all French cheese and wine until they stop the boats coming from Calais?
And he's got a lot more to say as well, but right now I'm going to take you over to King Charles delivering his VE Day message at a special event in London. Here we go.
Many burdens, but carried them unflinchingly without complaint.
Please welcome to the stage His Majesty the King.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 80 years since my grandfather, King George VI, announced to the nation and the Commonwealth that the dreadful shadow of war has passed from our hearths and our homes. The liberation of Europe was secured. His words echo down through history, as all this week, and especially today, we unite to celebrate and remember with an unwavering and heartfelt gratitude the service and sacrifice of the wartime generation who made that hard-fought victory possible. While our greatest debt is owed to all those who paid the ultimate price, we should never forget how the war changed the lives of virtually everyone. Now, as then, we are united in giving utmost thanks to all those who served in the armed forces, the uniformed services, the home front, indeed all the people of this country, the Commonwealth, and beyond, whose firm resolve and fortitude helped destroy Nazism and carry our allied nations through to VE Day. That debt can never truly be repaid, but we can and we will remember them. Over the course of the last year, there have been 80th anniversaries across Europe, from the hills of Monte Cassino to the lower Rhine at Arnhem. Last June, my wife and I were profoundly moved to join veterans of D-Day at the new National Memorial overlooking Gold Beach as they returned to honor their comrades who never came home. In January, as the world marked the liberation of Auschwitz, I met survivors whose stories of unspeakable horror were the most vivid reminder of why victory in Europe truly was the triumph of good over evil. All these moments and more combine to lead us to this day, when we recall both those darkest days and the great jubilation when the threat of death and destruction was finally lifted from our shores. The celebration that evening was marked by my own late mother, who, just 19 years old, described in her diary how she mingled anonymously in the crowds across central London, and, in her own words, walked for miles among them. The rejoicing continued into the next day, when she wrote, "Out in the crowd again, Embankment, Piccadilly, rained, so fewer people, conquered into house, sang till 2 a.m., bed at 3 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen, I do hope your celebrations tonight are almost as joyful, although I rather doubt I shall have the energy to sing until 2 a.m., let alone, for that matter, to lead you all in a giant conga from here back to Buckingham Palace. The Allied victory being celebrated then, as now, was a result of unity between nations, races, religions, and ideologies, fighting back against an existential threat to humanity. Their collective endeavour remains a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when countries stand together in the face of tyranny. But even as we rejoice again today, we must also remember those who are still fighting, still living with conflict and starvation on the other side of the world. For them, peace would not come until months later with VJ Day, Victory in the Pacific, which my father witnessed at first hand from the deck of his destroyer, HMS Whelp. So, in remembering the past, we must also look to the future. As the number of those who lived through the Second World War so sadly dwindles, the more it becomes our duty to carry their stories forward, to ensure their experiences are never to be forgotten. We must listen, learn, and share, just as communities across the nation have been doing this week at local street parties, religious services, and countless small acts of remembrance and celebration. And as we reach the conclusion of the 80th anniversary commemorations, we should remind ourselves of the words of our great wartime leader, Sir Winston Churchill, who said, "Meeting jaw to jaw is better than war." In so doing, we should also rededicate ourselves not only to the cause of freedom, but to renewing global commitments to restoring a just peace where there is war, to diplomacy, and to the prevention of conflict. For, as my grandfather put it, we shall have failed, and the blood of our dearest will have flowed in vain if the victory which they died to win does not lead to a lasting peace founded on justice and established in goodwill. Just as those exceptional men and women fulfilled their duty to each other, to humankind, and to God, bound by an unshakable commitment to nation and service, in turn, it falls to us to protect and continue their precious legacy, so that one day hence, generations yet unborn may say of us, they too bequeathed a better world.
Well, King Charles there with his rousing V-Day message to the people. And that was, a live event there taking place in London. Very much a celebration. But, well, as the country celebrated the 80th anniversary of VE Day today, I caught up with former Prime Minister Boris Johnson about our greatest generation and why we must never forget their sacrifices. So we spoke in Hillingdon Council's Battle of Britain bunker. This place is unbelievable, by the way, if you've not been there. Winston Churchill famously declared, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." So that was after he oversaw the coordination of the Battle of Britain in 1940. And here now is the first bit of my interview with former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Mr Johnson, absolute pleasure.
Patrick, honour to be back on your show.
And you've just taken the red eye from Washington. So
yes, of course. It's very, very important to be here with you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Why is it so special to be here specifically to commemorate the 80th anniversary of VE Day?
Well, because I think this is a place that, for me, and I think for many, many other people, symbolises British resistance to Nazi aggression during the Second World War. And it just casts your mind back, Patrick, to the afternoon of September the 11th, 1940. Churchill's up there with Keith Park at the head of the RAF, Hastings Ismay, the military advisor, and everybody else. And they've been watching all day, virtually, as the Germans have sent wave after wave of planes over Britain, heavily outnumbering the RAF. And there comes a point when Churchill turns, he says, we know how much more have we got to send up there? And they said, there's nothing. Every single plane that could be committed to the defence of this country had been committed. And, famously, at the end of the day, the battle ends, or that day's battle ends with the Germans again going back home, the RAF having shot down many German planes. And he leaves this bunker in his car, driving to Chequers, and he says to Hastings Ismay, his military advisor, "Don't talk to me. I've never been so moved." And then he sits there thinking, and then he taps him on the shoulder from the back seat, and he says, "Never in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few." And he then repeated that. That was his summary of what he'd seen. And it was right, because, there were, 2,500 German planes, fewer than 1,000 British planes. And it really is true that mastery of the skies then by Germany would have been catastrophic for Britain and for Europe and for the world, because it's true that it would have been difficult for Germany to just send an invasion force and conquer Britain by sea.
Yeah.
But if they'd controlled the skies over London, they would have been able to hold us.
Well, and this is where they would have been seeing this in kind of live action, old school analog style, because this is what they've got here, which is anything with a particular letter on it there is the enemy, and this is us, and they'd have been moving them around, wouldn't they?
So Churchill,
and getting it called in as well with this headset here.
That's right, and you've got all the kit exactly as it was used in the summer and autumn of 1940, and it is true that the technology was incredibly primitive, but I think the thing that comes across me is the incredible bravery of these young men. They were overwhelmingly men up in the air, and I think they were all men. And how much we owe to them. And I think back to my grandparents' generation. I wonder sometimes whether we are made of the same stuff as they are.
Well,
I think we are. I think we are.
Explain that to me. Do you think we are? Because a lot of people think we've gone a bit soft. A lot of people think that the younger generation, they've never had to live through anything like this. They take everything for granted.
I think the great thing about the British is, famously somebody once said they lose every battle except the last, right? And, I think we would come through again. And I think there's a natural spirit in this country, which Churchill, he said, I wasn't the lion, but I was privileged to give the roar. And I think that's right. I think he articulated people's deep instinct to protect their country and to fight for freedom. Because I think that is still very much alive in Britain today.
I'm glad you think that, because the opinion polls would beg to differ sometimes when it comes to a younger generation being willing to fight for Britain. But you think if the situation arose, you think they'd go for it?
I really do. And, you know, obviously we're all working in the praying and making sure nothing like that ever happens again. We don't want any such thing to happen. But I think that this country is, you know, very fierce in its defense of democracy and freedom. And one of the things you notice in the whole Ukrainian conflict is how strong the support remains in the UK for the Ukrainians. I mean, really, after 3 and a bit years of war, and the Ukrainians feel it too. And I think that's because we are committed to freedom.
Well, we'll come on to the more global aspects and whether or not we're going to end up with another world war at some point soon. But bearing in mind, this is the Battle of Britain bunker. You rightly said Churchill would have been up there, you know, masterminding, orchestrating all of this, feeling everything very deeply. How do you react to the modern day conversation as to whether or not Churchill was actually a villain or a hero?
Look, he was a man of his times. But he was overwhelmingly, for me, a hero. And yes, he of course has. He was born under Queen Victoria. He lived in an entirely different epoch. Not everything he said, not all his attitudes correspond to ways we think today. Of course they did. But if Churchill had not been in the room in May 1940, when Britain had to make the choice between doing a deal with Hitler, orchestrated by Mussolini, or fighting on as we did, and remember, September 1940, where that day we're talking about, we were on our own, right? Nobody else was fighting on against the Nazis in Europe. And it was a long time before the Americans came into the war. If he hadn't made that decision to fight on, then there's no question, in my view, that Hitler would have found it far easier to turn. He wouldn't have wasted time trying to subjugate Britain. He would have gone straight for the Soviet Union. Stalin would have been far less prepared. Hitler might very well have succeeded. And frankly, Western Europe might have been subjugated by a Nazi, a racist, evil Nazi tyranny. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. So
we owe him everything, basically.
Well, I think the world owes him a huge, huge debt. And look, he got some things wrong, but so does every politician. But on that, you know, you look at Churchill's career. I mean, you know, he made goof after goof. He cocked up the gold standard. He was terrible on India. Gallipoli was a disaster. He wasn't exactly sound on the suffragettes. I mean, you know, he made huge mistakes. But when it came to this fundamental moment of choice. Do you fight on? Or do you do a deal? Do you do a deal with?
But they say that stuff about you, right? They say that stuff about you. They say Boris, he got the big calls right.
No, well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things about when you look at the life of Churchill, you realise that, you know, he really was not to be compared with.
With you?
No, certainly not, and not with the present general. He was made a very, very different stuff, and he's an inspirational guy. I mean, he wrote a huge amount of stuff, and I think what he had was courage. I mean, he was a very interesting guy because when he was a young kid, he was pretty scrawny and runty. He wasn't very tall. I think he was about 5'6" tall. Right? And he had a pretty narrow chest, but he kind of built himself up. And he was so ashamed at school when some schoolboys pelted him with cricket balls and he ran away, that at a young age he decided he had to overcome his own terrors, as it were. And that's the biggest battle, isn't it, that anybody faces? And he did that. Yeah, exactly. And so he really does repay study, old Churchill.
So later on today, there'll be the 2-minute silence. What goes through your mind when there's that 2-minute silence?
Well, I think really of that generation and what they did for us. And it wasn't just the airmen and women. It was all the men and women of the armed forces. It was everybody who suffered so much and suffered such privations in Britain for such a long time. And we the war was a very, very grim business for families, for not just families of those who were fighting, but for everybody. And so it was an incredible sacrifice that they made for freedom, but it was worth it. And so when the bells peal out for VE Day and victory, they will commemorate an extraordinary moment in history, which was the end of this terrible, terrible conflict in Europe, and the beginning of what has been really one of the greatest periods of peace and prosperity for the Western world since the days of the Antonine emperors in ancient Rome, and really a huge, long period of peace that was won for us by that generation. And I think that's what really goes through my mind. I think about, as I say, my grandparents, and as I'm sure everybody does in this country.
OK, well, buckle up, because very shortly you're going to hear Boris Johnson talking about small boats. He has some novel ideas about how we can stop those boats. Grooming gangs. He wades in on the Nigel Farage reform conundrum, and, of course, the US trade deal. But just to react to that first clip there, I'm joined by my wonderful panel. It is, of course, political commentator Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Sean, there was a bit of that clip there that I saw you shaking your head slightly when he said that he was optimistic that if it hit the fan now, Brits would rise to the occasion, that younger Brits would rise to the occasion.
There's no way we would. We are so divided. There is, if you support Britain, you're either racist or right, far right, whatever. We have a Prime Minister who, to my mind, is yet to demonstrate that he likes the country, and young people are taking it on. The police struggle to recruit, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force struggle to recruit. So, unfortunately, I wish Boris was right on that, but I don't think he is. And I think it's one of the things we really need to address, and I blame academics. There was a study done some years ago when they asked teachers could they teach British history in a positive light, and they said no.
OK, Suzanne?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're going to be talking about reform later with Boris, I know, but, you know, this is one thing that Nigel Farage has said, that the education system has poisoned young minds. The Times did a poll very recently. They found only 1 in 10 young people aged between 18 and 27 would be prepared to fight for Britain.
I mean, that's scandalous.
41% wouldn't under any circumstances, and they think we're a racist country. You're right, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, disgraceful. Matthew, what about you? Do you think there that Boris is right to be an optimist, to think that if it did all kick off again, that actually, despite these polls, despite these facts, we might rise to it?
Well, I don't often agree with Boris, but I do agree with him on this. I actually think that I think the experience of Ukraine is the one that I would say, that Ukraine was actually a very divided country as well, had huge political factions, etc. But when it came down to it, the country united, even the generation who were addicted to their phones, etc. You know, all the things we say, that it's not like 1939 again, but I think people would rise to the challenge. And I hope they don't have to. I hope that peace prevails.
I hope that.
Indeed. All right, well, look, let's get stuck into the next part of my exclusive interview with Boris Johnson in that Battle of Britain bunker. There's a lot to unpack here, OK? So strap yourselves in for this. I did ask him whether or not he thought that Britain was still worth fighting for today. One of the real privileges that I've had here over the last couple of weeks is to speak to the surviving veterans. And there was a 100-year-old man who was in the Navy at the time by the name of John King, who I spoke to a couple of weeks ago. And I asked him, when he looked around Britain today, did he think it was worth fighting for? And he said no. And he made reference to crime, rapid demographic and cultural changes, etc. Do you think we've let our greatest generation down?
No, I think that this is a great, great country and a beautiful country, and no, I don't agree with that, honestly, and you wouldn't expect me to. I'm sad that he feels like that. I think we have things we need to sort out. I think crime is one that obviously I care about a huge amount, and it makes me furious because I think it is so fixable. And I think, unfortunately, I mean, we're not meant to be party political on a day like this, but, you know, I do think that the current government has the wrong approach on law and order. I think when I look at street crime, I look at knife crime, the so-called minor crimes, you know, unless you come down hard on this, shoplifting, You know, we've got an epidemic of shoplifting in Britain at the moment. You need to get back to the basics, which is zero tolerance for minor crimes. That's the thing that works. You stop you come down hard on the small stuff, and you magically, a lot of the big stuff will also disappear. We found that in London when I was running the city. And I think that the whole approach to the criminal justice system is not tough enough either. And, you know, and look at some of these things like this business with the grooming gangs and all this nonsense, you know. You come down much harder.
Yeah, how does that make you feel when you see that dominated the headlines? And Labour seems to be saying, oh, it's political points scoring.
I think it's absolutely extraordinary. I mean, it looks like, I can't comment about it in detail because but it looks like a pretty systematic habit of exploitation of young girls, and no matter who is doing it, it needs to be stamped out. And I don't know quite why we don't have a proper national inquiry into it.
You'd want one, would you?
Well, I don't.
If you were still Prime Minister, you'd have one.
Inquiries, you know, in my view, can often be a huge waste of taxpayers' time and money. But in this particular case, I think I want to understand how this thing has been going on in this way. And
well,
I saw, apparently it still is. I saw a programme the other night which suggested it still is. So, you know, that's about attitude. And the same point can be made about knife crime, about stop and search. Come down hard on these guys. It's what the families want. If you're the mother of a kid who's going out equipped with a bladed weapon, you want the police to be able to stop and search your son, almost invariably your son, and take that weapon off him, right? And we should be backing the police to do that. They have the powers to do it, but they need the support. And knife crime's way, way too high. Get it down again. Britain should have a reputation as one of the safest, most lovely places in the world to live in. It does, by the way, for the most part, around the world. But we've got some problems in London.
We do have some problems.
And other cities.
Yeah, indeed. And look, I suppose whilst we're talking about this stuff, it does bring me on to the idea that here we are talking about how we fended off an invasion of Britain, VE Day today, the 80th anniversary of it. Churchill would have been sitting right up there, and today, probably, we have boatloads of young men coming across the English Channel.
And it drives me nuts. And it drives the British people nuts. And, you know, in my moments of real anger and impatience about this, I think, why don't we kind of do something really crackers like Trump and put a 500% tariff on all French cheese and wine until they stop the boats coming from Calais? It wouldn't work, and it probably is. And I think actually the French are making an effort. I think they could do more. What you need is an instant method of sending them back, or not just sending them back, but not even sending them, sending them for processing somewhere else. And whatever people say about it, and people make fun of it, and everybody satirizes, but the Rwanda plan was for the boat people, for the people coming across illegally by boat, was a very good plan. And it was, if we coupled that with getting out of the European Convention on Human Rights, so we speed up these, we avoid these constant legal processes, and we had a really serious offshore processing system in Rwanda, I think you'd start fixing it. The interesting thing is that we just had to mention the Rwanda plan, if you remember, back in 22, and to say that it was coming, and lo and behold, where are the boats coming from? Over there. They started down there. They started to slow down.
Yeah.
And I think that is, it is a viable plan, and I think the British people are absolutely fed up to the back teeth of this stuff. And what it does, of course, the arrival all these illegals undermines people's trust in the whole system.
It's also the cost. I mean, 15 billion quid over the next 3 years or so, I think it is, anyway. Well, we're cutting winter fuel payments for pensioners, tax burdens going up and up. It does seem like the social contract's a bit broken there, I think, doesn't it?
I think you're right. And I think it's one of the things that people, they don't understand. They don't understand why politicians can't fix it. I reckon if we'd been left to get on with it, and deliver the Rwanda plan, it would have fixed it.
You think if you were still in power, we wouldn't have a child crisis?
I think we could fix I definitely think we could fix the boats coming across.
You'd be in this bunker now.
There is such a place actually, which I went to. I think near Folkestone, where they can more or less see who's coming over in real time, but because of the law, because of of human rights, everything. All they can do, all our poor Coast Guards can do, and they're very humane people, they can just help them to avoid being drowned, which is what they do. And then they bring them here. And as soon as they're here, of course, as you say, they're in they're in the maw of the system. They're surrounded by lawyers who do everything they can to keep them here. And they made it. It's ridiculous because France is now not occupied by a Nazi tyranny, right? France is a free country, thanks to us and Winston Churchill. They're not fleeing tyranny in France. They're not fleeing oppression. They're fleeing one of the richest countries on earth to come to us, an even more successful country. And it's ridiculous. They have no reason to come here like that. And we should get back to the Rwanda scheme.
All right.
Seriously. Well, and what the interesting thing about the Labour, because they said it was terrible against human rights. Look at what they're doing. If you listen to what Labour is actually now saying, which I don't do very often, but I hear Starmer saying himself that he would like to see an offshore processing system. Am I right?
Well, they've changed their tune on a huge amount of stuff, haven't they? I mean, Keir Starmer, arguably a man who spent most of his career going into bat for people who maybe had...
But he's part of the whole network, right? So Starmer, I can't remember which chambers he was at, whether it was Doughty Street Chambers or whatever, but he's part of this great network of human rights lawyers that is basically devoted to the idea that they should try to defeat UK immigration law, defeat public will and common sense, and try and bring in as many people as possible. And to make sure that if people come here illegally, then their human rights trump the fact that they've broken the law. And that is the problem.
OK, well, a lot to unpack there from that particular segment. I've got a huge amount coming your way when it comes to Boris Johnson as well. Is he going to re-enter politics? There's many people speculating online that the only reason he did this interview today was because he's going to re-enter. Well, I asked him, and I got an answer, so you're going to have to wait for that. But it might interest you a little bit, I think. Let's deal with what we just heard, though, there. Got my wonderful panel here, of course, Conservative peer Lord Bailey. We've got Suzanne Evans as well, political commentator and former Labour Party advisor, Matthew Larzer. Sean, I'll start with you on this. I suppose the first bit there was when he said that we should have a national grooming gang inquiry, and if he was in power, we would have one. I suppose the problem was he was in power, wasn't it?
Yeah, but look, the Conservatives can say they did a lot about it, and they did. But that's history. What we need now is something to be done now. What's really important is Jess Phillips made an enormous rumpus about this going on. I actually believed her. I looked at that and thought, you've gone beyond politics here, Jess. Well done, this is important. The moment she had the power to do it, she didn't. And it looks like one could be of the opinion that she didn't do it because it might threaten her political existence. And that, for me, is an awful shame, because I really liked the moment that she made a rumpus and a point about it, but I was really disappointed. And it's the kind of thing that makes all politicians look bad.
OK. Suzanne, I mean, he then zoned in, didn't he, not just on the grooming gangs thing, but on illegal immigration.
Yeah.
And he said it really bothers him.
He said it drives him nuts. I mean, I tell you what drives me nuts, Boris. It's former prime ministers complaining about stuff that they never did anything about when they were in office.
Absolutely.
I mean, he did absolutely nothing. In fact, he arguably made it worse. He was talking about crime there as well. Well, why is one reason why our country is not the cohesive country it used to be? It's because uncontrolled immigration has happened so broadly, and nobody's been encouraged to integrate. And we know from the latest figures that foreign migrants, particularly illegal migrants, are responsible for a lot of crime. So again, something else he didn't do anything about, the Boris wave. You know, he talked about controlling immigration in the Conservative manifesto. Privately, he wants that amnesty for illegal migrants that he spoke about when he was Mayor of London. I think he does, Sean. And, you know, but he's partly responsible for the problems he's now apparently suggesting somebody else sorts out.
Well, Matthew, he says that Rwanda would have worked and that Keir Starmer is just part of the human rights lawyer blob that doesn't really want to sort anything out.
Well, you can't blame him for trying. I mean, you know, as my nan used to say, he's got more front than Blackpool. I just did, when we were listening to him, I just did the figures on small boats arrivals. The year before he became Prime Minister, there were 1,845. The year he left, there were 45,774. That's a 2,380% increase.
It's even worse now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not saying Labour sorted it out, but he didn't. Yeah. And that's why, you know, it reminds you, he talks a good talk, but when it came to actually fighting the fight, he didn't deliver.
Let's be clear, the entire political firmament talked a good talk, because one of Boris's big problems was Labour. They voted against all of...
They had a majority, Sean.
They voted against all the options, and what they did, very skillfully... Right, one of the things I admire about the Labour Party, I truly believe they're the best campaigning organisation in the world. And one of the things they did, they changed the subject. They made everybody think if you talked about immigration, you were racist, so everybody backed off. And all politicians failed, and now we're all suffering.
I mean, that's the problem.
I couldn't agree more.
If you're going to be in politics, you've got to be able to speak up and do what's right.
I couldn't agree more.
And you know, Boris clearly didn't speak his mind before the election and did afterwards.
The problem was they made everybody feel like a racist for talking about immigration, so they couldn't.
Well,
because you look like a racist and then they cancelled you.
Well, the whole reason why we're ultimately there in that segment with Boris Johnson got into things like grooming gangs, crime and illegal immigration was because of that first question that I put to him, which is, you know, on this, the 80th anniversary of VE Day, I said, have we let our veterans down? Have we let those brave heroes down? Matthew, do you think we have? He says we haven't, but I can't help but feel as though quite a few of them might not be best pleased with what they see today.
Well, I'm very sad that the veteran that you mentioned in that very first question feels that the country isn't one that he thinks is worth fighting for. I'm not sure that every veteran thinks that, not just veterans of the Second World War, but veterans of other wars. But yeah, there are clearly things, there's a lot that needs fixing in this country. There's a lot that needs sorting. You know, and I hope that we have a bit more of the spirit of the Attlee government. If we look back at what Churchill said, just a few weeks later, Churchill was turfed out as Prime Minister when the country turned to Labour. Just a really big cultural as well as political sea change. I hope that this government, the Labour government, can capture a bit of that, what you might call sort of progressive patriotism that Attlee represented.
They absolutely can't, because it's been people on the left and the Labour government that have supported the academics that have absolutely rewritten our history. They're rewriting our history in order to make it look entirely bad in every single aspect. That's why people won't fight. So when you said, have you let down those veterans? Absolutely. And what the left is very instrumental in doing now is rewriting our history to make everything look bad. And that is something that the government can't recover from because it's been part of.
But it's not just academics, it's politicians as well. I mean, you know, before the Brexit referendum, loads of people used to say to me, I don't know why we bothered fighting the war. Germany's still in control. I mean, it's a very simple soundbite, but that's what people said. And you look at, I mean, it is certainly public institutions in general, I think.
I should say
You've had all sorts of governments have put people into positions of power in public institutions who are of a socialist, communist persuasion. Even the Conservative government. They put loads of people into these quangos who basically were on the wrong side of politics, in my view, and I'm sure your view too, Sean. I thought you had a very good question, Patrick, about the social contract. You said, you know, it's getting a little bit wobbly. No, it's been completely smashed to pieces. It's finished, it's done. And that's why people don't believe in Britain. That's why they won't fight for this country. They don't think it's worth fighting for.
I'm a lot more optimistic about our country. I mean, I don't think Britain's broken. I think there are things in Britain that are broken, but I still think this is a great country. I think we can make it a better country still.
It's a great country worth fighting for.
A lot of things to change to make it great.
But let's be clear. it's broken. And one of the most important things that's broken, which I think the Labour government will struggle to get around, I don't think it's impossible for them, is the idea that people are responsible for their own goings-on. One of the worst things in this country is that the government keeps saying they do everything. Everything's about public service, public service. The only way for our public services to cope is to lower the demand, and that means some of the responsibility has to return to people and their families.
It's a nanny state. You know, it seems to me that not just Labour, but the previous Conservative government too wanted us all subservient, all doing exactly as we were told, completely dependent on the state and paying our taxes basically to put ourselves in subjugation.
Do you think Rwanda would have worked? Boris Johnson was absolutely 100% adamant that if they'd have been left to get on with Rwanda without any interference, it would have worked. Do you agree?
I think there were some signs that it was starting to work already because the migration was slowing, those illegal boats were slowing, and then as soon as the Conservative government was out of office and Rwanda, I mean, Labour said Rwanda's finished, first week they were in office.
So it's one of the first things he said.
Absolutely. It of course, we've seen now the numbers of...
Because these are organised gangs. So the message... There's only a few people that had to receive the message. And once we started offshore processing, it would have been far easier to sell at even more effective, bigger number of...
That's one of Boris Johnson's big get out of jail cards when it comes to illegal immigration, is that he can legitimately stand there and say that, well, he would have done Rwanda, wouldn't he? And he was stopped from doing that. And actually, if we had done that, then the Channel migrant crisis would be no more.
Well, I mean, you know, he's trying to use his get out of jail card for a jail that he built himself, because it's a problem, as I said, that massively exploded when he was Prime Minister. Rwanda wouldn't have worked. I do believe in offshore processing. The government needs to do a hell of a lot more. And one of the things we need to do is process people before they get anywhere near France, when they're in North Africa, before they come on the journey. And we need to work with others to do that, because we can't, you know, we can talk about wave machines to send people back to France. We need to stop people coming into Europe in the first place.
Allowed to set foot on British soil, full stop.
Exactly. It's funny you should say that, yeah, because Boris Johnson did come up with some novel ways. He shone a light, actually, into some really, well, weird ways that the Conservative government under him thought about trying to stop the small boats crisis, including, and you'll hear a bit more about this later on, I think, but some James Bond-style underwater contraption. I'm not joking now, seriously. Some James Bond-style underwater contraption that would swallow the boats, presumably humanely. But, I mean, yeah.
Is that his Weetabix today?
But there was a lot of other news, because shortly before I went to meet up with Boris Johnson, we had to set off at about 6 o'clock this morning. Easy for me to say, get to the bunker, see Boris, and then the news broke on the way that we were going to get this trade deal with the US, right? But obviously we didn't quite know what it was yet, so I had to ask him about it. Luckily for us, Boris Johnson had just got back from Washington, so he knew all about it, and he had formulated some strong views. Here it is.
Being able to do this deal individually with the United States, if we weren't outside the European Union, that's for ding dang sure.
Yes, so Boris Johnson tells me why Keir Starmer is reaping the benefits of Brexit, the very Brexit he tried to overturn. He also gave some quite astonishing details about his government's attempted negotiation with the Indian government and why they didn't sign the deal that Keir Starmer has just signed. I found that very, very enlightening. Of course, the big question I know that you all want answered is whether or not he's going to come back into frontline politics. Some people say the only reason he did this interview was so that he can pave the way for it. Well, you're going to have to wait and see, aren't you? But could the Labour leader have done today's US-UK trade deal without Brexit? Before all of that, though, we're going to be hearing a little bit more from Boris, and we're also going to be talking a bit about the new Pope as well. But Steve Baker joins us very shortly, actually, the former Brexit minister, to zone in on this latest US-UK trade deal. Stay tuned.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst there's high pressure across the UK, bringing largely settled weather here, it's a different story over more southern parts of Europe. A fairly potent feature is pushing into parts of the Canary Islands towards Madeira as well, bringing some wet and windy weather as we go towards the weekend. Elsewhere, a fair few showery bursts of rain around. We've had some heavy thunderstorms affecting Italy. They've now pushed their way a little bit further southwards, could cause some further issues, turning a little bit drier for many as we go through the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
From a PETA point of view, I see you guys are in the newspapers today, PETA, and it's about the definition of a rat. Have you seen this story?
Yeah, I have indeed. And, you know, rats are individuals. And, of course, we want everyone to respect all animals. But one point I would like to raise is that, you know, we mention animals who are going extinct. There are over 2,000 species right now that are on the endangered list.
Well, rats
and there are
won't be one of
thousands
them.
more. Well, you know, rats are important as well, but we're here to talk about, you know, the dire wolves. And it's important to point out that we need to think about what's going to happen to these animals once they're released back into the wild, because this is really complicated.
Yes,
and we need to remember that humans don't have a good track record of our treatment of wolves. Thousands are being culled as we speak due to perceived overpopulation problems. So why are scientists trying to bring back more of these animals when their cousins are being blasted out of their homes? It doesn't make sense, and we need to focus our efforts on protecting animals that are already here.
I get that. Just to say, a rat, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is a small rodent. The noun can mean also an unpleasant person who deceives others or is not loyal. And you guys think that's unfair to rats, and you want it redesignated and redescribed. And I don't know if James Cagney would appreciate with you, you know, because I think when he was going, "You dirty rat, you dirty rat," I don't think that he was really wanting anybody kind or nice coming to him or whatever, but that's historic film.
Well, look, this is a completely friendly request, and we want to encourage everyone to respect all animals. Rats are lovely creatures, they're intelligent, and they're actually very clean. So, you know, this was a friendly request to the Oxford Dictionary, just to right a simple wrong.
OK.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Welcome back to Patrick Christies Tonight. So coming up, is it time to take a leaf out of Germany's book and send undocumented migrants packing? But first, a historic and comprehensive trade deal was agreed between the UK and the US earlier today, with Sir Keir Starmer saying it proved the world that Britain is open for business. As part of the deal, the 25% tariff on UK steel was scrapped completely, and taxes on British cars lowered to 10%. For 100,000 cars exported per year. US President Donald Trump said that the momentous deal was only possible, wait for it, because of Brexit.
That was always a big part of your decision on Brexit. And they were never able to make that deal. It was, you know, it was a tough one. And this one was, it's amazing with time. This one just went very smoothly, went quickly and smoothly.
Well, there we go. Joining me now is the former Brexit minister. It is Steve Baker. Steve, thank you very much for joining us. So is this a big Brexit win that Starmer, the man who tried to overturn Brexit, is reaping the benefits of?
Well, it is a big Brexit win, but yeah, this is a very strange situation because Keir Starmer was really owned by Donald Trump today, and yet owned in a good way, because tariffs are not going to be as bad as they might have been with Donald Trump in power. But equally, we haven't gone back to where they were before Donald Trump hoisted them up. So it's good news in the sense that Brexit's really done now, with the Indian free trade agreement and now opening the door to a good free trade agreement with the USA. This means that really we've set sail, we're doing Brexit, and even a Labour government has been forced to do Brexit the way that I would have wanted it done.
When you look at this US trade deal, what have we had to give?
Not very much, actually, yet, not even the digital services tax. So some agricultural access, but it's reciprocal. But what we've really had to give is the principle that we're oriented towards the United States. So by being connected to the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, plus India, plus the United States, this really shows that the UK is now turning outwards to the world, and we can be an originator now of really great trade policy.
A couple of things on the Indian trade deal and then this as well. Look, Keir Starmer has raised taxes, or Rachel Reeves has raised taxes, national insurance as well for businesses, for employers. I know there was a lot of hoo-ha about whether or not Indians will now be able to get away without paying national insurance. So the optics of that are more tax for Brits, less tax for Indians. And then you've seen Starmer hammer the farmers here, but allow the US to have access into our market with US beef. So, I mean, it is looking like he's prioritising foreigners in some senses there, isn't he?
Well, I would certainly agree he's a terrible Prime Minister doing a bad job. I mean, he really is. I mean, his choices are bizarre, and I would not make the choices he is making. What really, in a sense, if I look pleased with the situation, it's only because I can look down the road to when we get a centre-right government, it can do good things with the trajectory that we've got. He's not wrecking everything in a way that can't be recovered. If he was to try and rejoin the European Union, it'd be a disaster. But yes, his choices are very strange.
You guys could have done a better deal, though, couldn't you? I mean, how many years was it? 14 years?
Yeah, we could. And Donald Trump's told us that while I was a Brexit minister, I didn't know about it, that we were offered a trade agreement. It wasn't, you know, if I'd known, I can assure you I would have seized it, but it was not a choice I could make.
Right.
But yeah, there's lots we could have done better. But I did a scorecard earlier, put it on my website. I put out a presentation just after the referendum, July 2016, saying how we should leave, all the kinds of free trade agreement we should do. And, you know, against that scorecard, July 2016, we did very well, with one exception, and that was regulating differently. And absolutely, it's true, we did not do enough to regulate differently, and that is a challenge for this government and for the next centre-right government.
Quite a lot of people, once the initial excitement of, we're getting some kind of trade deal with the US wore off, we thought, well, actually, what a day to announce it. It's VE Day. It's the 80th anniversary of VE Day. There's street parties up and down the country. There's a church service later. You know, there's all sorts. There's a party, which we saw before, with the King, and you're announcing a trade deal with the US. Was it appropriate?
It probably wasn't appropriate in many ways, but really, as I say, Keir Starmer got owned here. He's a big fan of the EU. Donald Trump absolutely despises the EU. And there was Keir Starmer fawning to the President of the United States on VE Day, taking a deal which wasn't as good as it ought to have been. But, as I say, better than it might.
Do you think he was bounced into the timing of this?
Oh, I am confident that the President of the United States chose this timing in order to rub the European Union's nose in the UK doing a deal with the USA. Yes, of course he did.
Let's just look further down the road, because I think, is it next week we've got this meeting with the European Union?
Yeah, I believe it's the 19th,
Yeah. Well, I mean, he might sign some kind of new deal with them as well, and then he's got the EU, India, America. Interest rates came down today. Hang on a minute, Keir Starmer's starting to look like a genius, isn't he?
Well, he's the beneficiary of a great deal of good luck, I think. But in particular, on the relationship with the European Union, it was always up for review this year. Now, I wish it had been a Conservative government doing the review. I would have been involved, would have been glad to. There's lots of sensible stuff we could agree that wouldn't be overturning Brexit or doing any harm. The big question is, can Keir Starmer dynamically align to EU law while doing a trade deal with the USA? Because that really would sell us out.
Yeah, a lot of people very, very worried about exactly what concessions he's going to get.
It shouldn't be possible. I think it would be a breach of our other arrangements. It ought not to be possible, and today it looks less likely, but he might try it.
Yeah, well, watch this space, really. I mean, that would be another nail in Keir Starmer's coffin if we ended up with some kind of monumental sellout and appeasement of the European Union. But Steve, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you in the studio. Steve Baker there, former Brexit Minister. Well, coming up at 10 p.m, Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, takes on Nigel Farage.
You don't think we'll see Prime Minister Farage?
I don't, no.
Oh, and can you guess what you think he's talking about here?
Do exactly what your wife tells you to do. my strong advice, just...
Yes, I've got a lot more Boris Johnson coming your way very, very shortly. And I asked him directly as well whether or not he is coming back. According to those opinion polls, they say he's the only man that could possibly make gains for the Conservative Party. Do you buy that? Stay tuned.
positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed home battery storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead towards the next couple of days, it's going to be feeling much warmer, particularly across eastern areas. Wall-to-wall sunshine for many, but it is still going to be fairly chilly through the overnight period. And the reason for this settled weather is all thanks to an area of high pressure slowly shifting its way eastwards, which means things are eventually going to start warming up for eastern parts. But back to this evening, we're going to see a mix of cloud and clear skies. And where we see the clear, prolonged skies, that's where temperatures are going to slip away, possibly even seeing some rural frost by the morning, potentially even some mist and fog too. So some areas just dipping below freezing, but for many, mid to low single figures. So a fairly chilly start for Friday, the end of the week. Potentially some cloud just drifting into the very far northwest of Scotland, perhaps bringing some light outbreaks of rain later. But for the majority of Scotland, a dry and bright start, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a dry and bright start to the day, and similar elsewhere across much of England and Wales. But it is going to be chilly, still potentially some mist and fog during the very early hours, but clearing quite readily through the course of the morning. And high pressure sticks around, so for many, we're going to see plenty of blue skies, particularly across central areas where they've had quite a cloudy afternoon this afternoon. And we could potentially see a fair bit of cloud just starting to creep into the very far northwest, some light outbreaks of rain later on into the afternoon. But for most, a dry, sunny day, feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 21 degrees Celsius. And you're particularly going to feel that in eastern areas where it's been quite chilly. Then for the start of the weekend, a fairly similar day. Lots of sunshine to come, but still a fair amount of cloud across the northwest with the chance of some light outbreaks of rain. And this theme pretty much continues for the rest of the weekend and into next week. Just need to keep an eye on Sunday. There is a chance we could see some thundery showers, but otherwise lots of warm sunshine to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed home battery storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next big winner on the road in this brand new Alnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. Imagine the fun you could have in this luxurious home from home worth over £67,000. We'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash to make your next getaway a great one. And it could be all yours. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christies and I have a very special show for you. Boris Johnson talks up Britain on VE Day.
I think that this country is, very fierce in its defence of democracy and freedom.
He waded into the grooming gang scandal.
The grooming gang. I don't know quite why we don't have a proper national inquiry into it.
A slightly bizarre solution to stop the boats.
Don't we kind of do something really crackers like Trump and put a 500% tariff on all French cheese and wine until they stop the boats coming from Calais?
Unsurprisingly, he doesn't think Starmer is the man to do it.
He's part of this great network of human rights lawyers that is basically devoted to the idea that they should try to defeat UK immigration law.
But he says that we've got Brexit to thank for the US-UK trade deal announced today.
It was a big part of your decision on Brexit, and they were never able to make that deal.
We wouldn't have been able to do this deal individually with the United States if we weren't outside the European Union. That's for ding dang sure.
And he decided to tee off on Nigel Farage.
You don't think we'll see Prime Minister Farage?
I don't, no.
And a tenner for anyone who can guess what he's talking about here.
Do exactly what your wife tells you to do. my strong advice, just...
And look, I tell you what, if all of that wasn't enough for you... A new pope has been chosen. We'll bring you the very latest with an extended Patrick Christies tonight. Trump, trade deals, Boris, the first American pope. We even had the king earlier. Are you not entertained? I'll unpack all of that with my top panel from now until midnight. And we've got political commentator Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. And for something a little bit different, can you tell me what this raccoon is getting up to?
Oh my God. Your meth pipe. He's playing with the meth pipe right now.
Well, get ready, Britain. Here we go. Boris Johnson absolutely slams Keir Starmer. Next.
Good evening, it's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. The top story this evening, Robert Prevost has been elected as Pope Leo XIV, becoming the first North American leader of the Catholic Church. The pontiff said, "Peace be with you all," as he made a Latin address, adding that this must be a church that builds bridges. White smoke rose from the roof of the Sistine Chapel after a group of 133 cardinal electors chose the new pontiff in the fourth round of voting in the conclave after it began yesterday afternoon. The 69-year-old from Chicago was only made Cardinal Bishop this year, with Vatican insiders describing him as the dark horse candidate who quietly rose to prominence days before the conclave. Reaction has been coming in from around the world, with US President Donald Trump saying he looks forward to meeting the first American Pope in what he calls a meaningful moment. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has said that this is a deeply profound moment of joy for Catholics in the United Kingdom and around the world. More reaction here on GB News throughout this evening. Elsewhere today, President Donald Trump has confirmed a first-of-its-kind trade deal between the US and the UK, with the president hailing it a historic day. During a phone call with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, the US president said the final details will be written up in the coming weeks, but explained that the deal will create an aluminium and steel trading zone and a pharmaceutical supply chain.
Speaking at a press conference after the announcement, the Prime Minister said that the landmark deal will save thousands of British jobs as car export tariffs will be reduced from 27.5% to 10%. The agreement is the first trade deal President Trump has struck in the wake of his global tariff war, and he added that there's no more red tape.
The UK will reduce or eliminate numerous non-tariff barriers that unfairly discriminated against American products, but this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries because it'll be really great for the UK also. So they're opening up the country. Their country is a little closed, and we appreciate that. They'll also be fast-tracking American goods through their customs process, so our exports go to a very, very quick form of approval, and there won't be any red tape. Things are going to move very quickly both ways.
And His Majesty the King has addressed the nation to mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day. Speaking during a concert at Horse Guards Parade this evening, King Charles said that today we unite to celebrate and remember with an unwavering and heartfelt gratitude the service and sacrifice of the wartime generation who made that hard-fought victory possible. His Majesty went on to reference present conflict, saying we should also rededicate ourselves not only to the cause of freedom, but to renewing global commitments to restoring a just peace where there is war. A 2-minute national silence took place at midday today to commemorate the anniversary and to remember and thank those who fought for our freedom. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, good evening, everybody. Now, if you are just joining us, then as the country celebrated the 80th anniversary of VE Day today, I was up at the crack of dawn driving to the Battle of Britain bunker to meet Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, who had just caught the red-eye over from Washington. It was quite an amazing experience to be in that bunker, to be around history, seeing the seat that Winston Churchill famously sat in as he declared never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few, after he oversaw the coordination of the Battle of Britain in 1940. So I did speak to Boris Johnson about that, but there was some other stuff on the agenda as well. Namely, this supposedly bumper UK-US trade deal that Sir Keir Starmer's government has just signed. Well, Boris actually had been in Washington the night before and he had the inside track on it. And he throws a little bit of shade on Keir Starmer. He talks about that and he's got a few choice words for Nigel Farage. So I think people might want to get a load of this.
We appear to be on the precipice of very, very dangerous times. There's the India-Pakistan conflict. You've mentioned Ukraine, Russia. There's obviously Israel, Gaza. Now, America's got Trump, OK? And he's trying to bring peace through strength. We, of course, have Keir Starmer, don't we?
Yes. Yes,
do you think he's fit to be, in a place like this, making decisions like Churchill made, dealing with the potential for World War III?
No, I think that Patrick, you talk about Ukraine and what's happening there, and everybody says, "Oh, well, Trump's too weak on Russia, and he should be doing more." And actually, I think that the stuff I'm seeing suggests that the Americans are now toughening up, and you saw what they did the other day. They gave more Patriot missiles to help protect the Ukrainians. Whatever you say about Trump, he was the guy. He was the guy who gave the Ukrainians. He broke the taboo on giving lethal weaponry to Ukraine. Obama didn't. Biden didn't. Trump, well, Biden didn't when he was vice president. Trump did when he was president, and he gave them those Javelin missiles, and he's continuing to supply absolutely crucial weaponry to the Ukrainians. Yes, look, he's trying to make peace. He's trying to do it from a position of strength. I think what's happening now in Washington is that the scales are falling from the eyes of the President Trump and his advisors about Russia. And the basic problem is that they thought we can make a reset with Russia. We can do a deal with Putin. It'll be a great. Putin doesn't want a deal. right? It's not his business model to have friendship with the United States. Putin is in power because he tells the Russian people that Russia is ringed by adversaries, by enemies, led by the United States. If he has a rapprochement, a new friendship with America, he destroys his central domestic political argument for his own existence or his own leadership. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's just a mistake to think that he wants to do. He doesn't want to do a deal. He wants to keep going. He wants to keep causing trouble in Ukraine. He'll keep pushing, not just in Ukraine, but everywhere else that he can, in the Baltic states, Georgia, wherever. He'll keep being aggressive and revanchist. And I think that the Trump White House has got this. And what I hope now is that they will do what Trump said he was going to do before the election, which is hit Putin with the really swinging sanctions. As you know, Lindsey Graham's got a big secondary sanctions bill before Congress. He got about 77 signatures. I mean, this will be really, really tough stuff. 500% sanctions on any country around the world trading in Russian
So you
Russian oil and
you
gas.
think Trump might pivot? You think that we might see President Trump, the rhetoric coming out of him in the coming weeks, which is actually Putin is a very, very bad guy and we're going to support Ukraine. And what, forget a deal, let's just beat him?
I hope so. I can't be certain that's what's going to happen. Honestly, Patrick, I think that we have to recognise that with President Trump, he thinks very much in personal terms, right? And you see, what he remembers about Russia and Putin is that for 2 years or so, the Democrats and the legal establishment tried to hit him with this stuff about his relationship with Russia that was not true. And it wasn't, and he remembered, do you know what I mean? And so I think Putin is an odious tyrant, and I think he's a war criminal and should be in The Hague. But for Trump, unfortunately, he connects him with the
smear campaign against himself.
That's it. So I think he'll get to the right place. Right. But I'm trying to get people to understand what's going through his head. But if you look at what he does, if you look at the actions that he's taken, if you look at the support that he's given to Ukrainians, look at the minerals deal, which calls for a free, sovereign and secure Ukraine, that's massively positive. And it means that Ukraine has a long-term economic partnership with the most powerful country on earth. It's a very good long-term.
Probably quite good for the Americans as well.
It is. But you should look at the terms of the deal that they signed. It's good for both sides.
Well, talking of a deal.
Yes.
The news broke on my drive up here today that potentially we are about to get some kind of trade deal with the Americans.
Oh, yes.
But you've just come back from Washington. Let me finish. I
discovered this yesterday. As often in my life, I knew I had the scoop. Yes.
Well, talk to me about this. You've just got back from Washington.
Yes.
So are you responsible for this then?
Well, no, I'm not. No, but Brexit certainly is.
Right. What is it, by the way? First, what is it?
Brexit is certainly responsible because we wouldn't have been able to do this deal individually with the United States if we weren't outside the European Union. That's for ding dang sure. Look, this deal is it's not as far as I understand it. I had a very brief conversation with some friends last night. It's not what we ultimately are going to go for, which is a proper all-singing, all-dancing free trade deal with the US. This is more a return to the status quo ante bellum Trumpium, if you see what I mean. This is so it's getting rid of some of the tariffs, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And we'll have to wait for the details, but it's getting rid of the tariffs. But the crucial thing is to stop this nonsense about 25% tariffs on Jaguar Land Rover and 100% tariffs on British film. This is insane, and we need to get rid of that as fast as possible.
Okay.
So I think it's a lot of progress on that area.
But this is a victory for Keir Starmer, isn't it? Just off the back of a UK-India trade deal. He's going great,
well,
Giles.
Yeah, thanks to Brexit, he's certainly reaping the dividends of that policy, which he, of course, signally failed to support at the time, as I recall. In fact, tried to overturn it 48 times in Parliament. Look, I think the India deal actually is a pretty good deal. I'm not certain I would have when I was running it, and we started obviously the negotiations ages ago with our Indian friends, with Narendra Modi. There's a bit in it that I think is a bit of a try on by the Indians, which is this thing about the next carve-out for Indian workers. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a carve-out for Indian workers in the UK. They don't have to pay national insurance contributions. I thought that was a complete wind-up when it was presented to me ages ago, and I don't think that the then International Trade Secretary Liz Truss felt the same, as far as I can.
Why? Why was that a wind-up?
Because well, look, it's just, why shouldn't everybody working in this country pay the same basic taxes on their salary, isn't it? I mean, that's it's not, so.
But Labour's gone for it. They've gone for it,
and they've gone for it because they want, in the wider interest of a deal. I'm not saying I would have voted, but it's good news. Look, it's good news for many other bits of the economies. It's good news for British services industry, good news for supermarkets, good news for whiskey exports. Scotch whiskey exporters think he'll probably add another billion or so. And the Indian market for British produce is huge. And one of the most interesting things about patterns of international trade in the last 20, 30 years is, we've seen China shoot up. Our trade with China, 45-degree increase in India has been much slower, even though it's a really fantastic market for us, and amazing friendships and relationships between Britain and India.
Okay, so you don't think that there's been a bit of a sellout here by Starmer?
Look, I mean, I think there's a limit. I wouldn't have done that particular thing, but I think it's overall very positive that they've got the deal.
All right, well, in the next segment there, we're going to hear from Boris Johnson giving his assessment of Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage, and whether or not he is actually on a mission to come back. His response to the polls, which would appear to say that the only person that could make a dent in reform at the moment would indeed be Boris Johnson. But lots to talk about from the clip you just heard there. And here to do it is political commentator Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Sean, I might as well start at the end there. Is Keir Starmer, as Boris says, just simply reaping the rewards of the very Brexit that he was desperate to overturn?
I mean, in short, yes, it would have been legally impossible to set a deal outside of Europe. That's just a fact. It's as simple as that. And I think Europe has major problems. We always talk about Brexit, it's terrible, this, that and the other, and we never talk about the state of Europe. And one of the most telling examples of how bad a state Europe is in, of the 20 biggest tech companies in the world, none of them are European.
Wow.
All of the major European car manufacturers have basically given their lunch to the Chinese, and the European Union is in the process of making that worse. So Europe is in the doldrums and will have to make major changes. And because of Brexit, we're outside of those concerns and can forge our own path. And remember, the deal that we made with the Pan-Pacific deal, allied to this deal, means that our business is getting access to world markets.
Do you think Keir Starmer's being a bit shameless here? I mean, the Indian deal, whatever you might think about that, the American deal again, but the very fact that we've done them, I mean, this is a guy who, as Boris Johnson said that, I think voted against pro-Brexit legislation something like 48 times, even called for a second referendum, and now here he is shamelessly saying, I've got these deals.
Politicians, not shameless. It's what they do best, isn't it? Come on. I'm really delighted about this. We've got 2 trade deals in as many days. Obviously, as Boris said, the UK-US trade deal isn't a all-singing, all-dancing free trade agreement. My goodness, it's very good. And for me, as someone who campaigned very heavily for Brexit, it's just another step on the road that would make it much more difficult for us to ever go back in. So I know there are some issues that I'll probably talk about in more detail later. So there are some issues with both deals, but fundamentally, it's great news.
OK, well, I'll tell you what are your issues with these deals?
Well, I think let's talk about the Indian one's the obvious thing about the national insurance. A lot of people have highlighted that one. With this one, with the US, I think it's great news for the British steel industry, if there's going to be a steel industry left to actually benefit from this.
Right.
I think it's great for car manufacturers, as Sean has mentioned, and I think it's great for British consumers who are going to have a much wider range of products coming into Britain. My worry is about farmers, about British farmers, and the way in which this trade deal has basically undercut them, particularly in the beef market. Now, but one of the other things that we could do, not being part of the European Union, is, for instance, to do what America does and subsidise wheat farming.
Okay.
What we're doing here is completely the wrong thing. We're subsidising solar panels to go on agricultural land, and we shouldn't be doing absolutely. But that's a massive thing. You know, we should be investing in our own food security, and Brexit could give us the right to do
Matthew,
that.
a couple of points here. You know, is Keir Starmer finally going to wake up and ever say the words "thank you very much" to everyone who went out there and voted for Brexit? You've just made my life a lot easier. I was wrong.
No, because I mean it's nice to see Brexiteers like Boris clutching at straws, but we will have lost £311 billion worth of trade by the middle of the next decade because of Brexit. In the first 2 years, we lost £27 billion in trade in the first 2 years after we signed the agreement.
Where are those facts from?
The 27 billion is from the second one's from Cambridge Economics. The first one, I'd have to check. And, I mean, look, nobody disputes. You talk to businesses up and down the land where exporting is now a nightmare. You talk about businesses that, because of the ridiculous situation with Northern Ireland, how many products are stamped not for Northern Ireland now? You know, and so Brexit was a massively anti-prosperity and anti-forward-looking act. Could these, of course, technically, these two deals could have been...
That has led to American and Indian trade deals.
I'm going to be honest, the American deal, I mean, there's no choice but dressing it up as a full-on trade deal. It's not. It's just a little... It's basically saving Jaguar Land Rover with a few bits put around the side. I mean, and it's fine, and that's a very good thing to do. But because you have the crazy Trump in the White House, who's just, you know, who makes up policy on Truth Social, whatever his thing is called, it just takes us back there. On the Indian thing, do you know how much the Indian deal's going to add? Whether we signed it, whether the Tories signed it, 0.1% to GDP. Instead, we're turned away from our market.
Brexit is so severe that you are coming on national television and undermining a Labour Prime Minister.
I'm not a member of the Labour government.
Deals, remarkable.
No, I think that the trade deals are fine. They're the right thing to do in the circumstances. We're not going to rejoin. There's no question of that. But most of the British people, I think Brexit was wrong. But look at every single poll says the British voters regret Brexit. Every single poll. It's true.
There's two small things that Matthew forgot to mention. The India deal is important to preserve the trade we already have, which is enormous, and grow it. And the second thing is none of those economic forecasts take into account the fact that we're no longer paying into Europe, and Europe still is going to continue to grow.
Suzanne, we were told we would be at the back of the queue, weren't we?
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? Yeah, I remember Obama coming over here during the EU referendum and saying, get to the back of the queue. He said, not line.
Yeah.
You know, I think he was...
We still haven't got one.
...by somebody in...
This is not a full free trade deal. It is...
What did I just say? I just said that, Matthew.
Exactly. It's, you know, and we are worse off economically, we're worse off politically, and we're weaker in the world, thanks to you, everybody who voted for Brexit.
As much as I know you loathe her, I don't know which you loathe more, Brexit or Trump, Matthew. You have to make a decision. But thanks to Trump, we're at the front of the queue.
Well, we haven't got one, so let's wait. We're still at the front of the queue, call it a line. We're still waiting.
I mean, look, hey, it's the first deal that Trump has signed, whatever it may be.
There's a lot of countries in the world who'd love to be...
Absolutely.
Actually, there's a lot of countries in the world who think... I mean, look, for example, I mean, Boris talked there about the film industry. We still don't know what's going to happen with the film industry, which actually contributes more of the economy than agriculture. I think agriculture is important as well, but we need to look at sectors in the round. So, you know, Brexit was bad for Britain, and you know, and British people are paying the price for it.
The US is our largest goods export partner and services too. We've got
It's not the EU is.
It's just the start.
The EU is. That's just not true. The EU is our largest export partner.
The only reason we could do this was because of Brexit. But
it's not our largest market. The EU is.
There is still and we're going to wait to see how much of this country Starmer sells out and gives to them, aren't we? There's still plenty of time for you to go. Oh God, we're doing this to grab a massive motorhome and £5 grand in cash as well. So here's how.
Don't miss out on a prize package worth over £72,000, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. You could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. Plus, a further £5,000 in tax-free cash will make sure your next adventure makes memories to last a lifetime. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, you're not going to want to go anywhere because we've saved the best till last when it comes to Boris Johnson. I'm going to have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And by the way, can I say we're on for an extra hour tonight because there's a whole world of news out there. We've got a new Pope, we've got VE Day celebrations, we've got new trade deals, we've got Germany getting tougher on immigration. But I will also reveal to you, in fact, I want you to try and guess, what do you think Boris is banging on about here?
Do exactly what your wife tells you to do. my strong advice, just...
OK, but before all of that...
You don't think we'll see Prime Minister Farage?
No, I don't. No.
Oh, buckle up, because we're about to see what Boris Johnson makes of Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party's chances at the next election, Nigel Farage, and crucially, whether or not he is making a comeback. So, don't forget, it's an extra special Patrick Christies tonight. We're on until midnight. I'll see you in a tick.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Amazing. I'm so pleased for him, and I think everybody in Northern Ireland. He did defeat an Englishman in the playoff.
He did.
Which is,
Justin Rose.
Yeah.
See, Justin Rose, not many people are going to talk about Justin Rose, well, apart from us.
Yes.
But Justin Rose, it talk about, the bridesmaid and the bride, and it's been that with Rory. He's been the runner-up in the Masters twice. And 44 years old, and to do what he did and get a round of 66 was incredible. But Rory, see, people have written Rory off, and I've got to admit, even a couple of years ago, and I'm thinking, this is not going to happen for Rory, because it's this ultimate Grand Slam. Now, I think in golf, the Grand Slam is probably harder to win than any other sport, tennis, anything else. Because if you just look at the list, so this is basically to win the PGA, the American PGA, the US Open, the Open here, and the Masters. So this is to win the big 4 throughout your career. And only Gene Sarazen in 35, Ben Hogan in 1953, Gary Player in 1965, the legendary Jack Nicklaus in 66, and Tiger Woods in 2000. They're the only people to have done it. And if you think of all the great golfers over the years, nobody, apart from them, have managed it. And now Rory's managed it, and that makes him the greatest European golfer there has ever been.
Well, there's emotion you see there. You see what he so wants.
Absolutely. He broke down in tears at the end, and it's not surprising because this is the thing. And it's 2011 was the last time he won a major. So at the time when he was much younger, they were coming left, right and centre, and you think this kid's going to do everything. And then he was winning tournaments, but not those majors. And it was the Masters. That was the one he wanted. Give him a bus tour. Get the open top bus out. Get him around. And
he will.
He'll deserve it. Absolute hero.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back, everybody, to Patrick Christies Tonight. So it's time now for more of that exclusive interview with Boris Johnson in the Battle of Britain bunker, the same room where Winston Churchill oversaw the Battle of Britain. So, look, we kind of got to the big stuff, really. I wanted to ask the former Prime Minister if he was going to make a political comeback, if he was going to save his party from being obliterated by Nigel Farage's Reform UK. Here he is.
I want to ask you about some of the latest opinion polls, because they say very clearly that only you can save the Conservative Party. Look at where we are today. Boris, look at where we are today. Right, in the Battle of Britain bunker. Yeah, you're a historian. You're a you're a patriot. Yeah, right? So if you care about Britain, you care about your party, why don't you come back and lead it?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, it's all in the pages of Unleash, which I've discussed with you before.
Yes. Surprised you haven't brought a copy with you.
No, normally I have a copy which I try to sort of rugby past you. No, I've got. Look, it's all there. Her late Majesty the Queen said to me a very good thing I've never forgotten about politics is really only do things if you genuinely think you can be useful. And at the moment, yes, it's true. Our party, and I'm not convinced I'm in a position to do that at the moment. Our party is in a tough spot, but as Kemi has said, you know, we always knew going into these local elections that it wasn't going to be brilliant. Everybody knew that was coming, and I think one thing, Kemi is a very interesting and original mind. I think she's probably the most original thinker of the current crop of leaders by a long way. And I think she just needs time to get going, and she has got time. You know, people say they look at this or that poll. Linton Crosby used to remind me that there was a time when John Howard was on 9%. And the magazines in Australia, you remember John Howard, the magazines in Australia used to run pictures of John Howard on the cover saying, "Why does this guy bother?" And he was, you know, he was thought to be complete 9%, right?
Yeah.
He went on to be the most successful international Conservative Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher. At least 10 years in power, did a huge amount of good for Australia, and completely turned it around because he was dogged and he was determined and he got things done. And I think that's the template for Kemi. If I were her, I would just keep going. And by the way, I mean, the other thing, of course, that Howard did, he said the boat's back, mate.
Yeah.
He turned back the boats. That's one thing. You know, I think so. I think if we need to come up with a plan for that,
yeah,
and we've got one, we had one. We need to get back to that. Kemi should go hard on that. And
do you think she should actually say we should turn back the boats?
Well,
because can we? You know, because
so the trouble is that this is a very, very good question. It's not so the Greeks do it off Lesbos, right? They literally bump into the boats and send them back. I mean, they're not meant to, strictly speaking, but they do. The trouble is these are quite treacherous waters, the Channel, and it is very, very dangerous. And it's not just the legal difficulties we would face in doing that. It's the reality that if I ordered that to happen, I'd be asking people in the Royal Navy or in the Coast Guard or whatever to do something that really went against their own human instincts. Because their instincts are trying to save life and not to endanger life. So I promise you, we looked at so many we looked at weird James Bond things that are going to come up from the sea and engulf the boats, and you know.
I'm going to have to ask you to elaborate on that.
All sorts of strange things. We were going to have sonic booms to deter them. All sorts of stuff.
None of it really.
The wave machine, was the wave machine true? Do you remember Priti Patel's wave machine we heard about? Was that an idea?
There was more than a grain of
Well, it's the kind of thing that during the war people came up with these ingenious, slightly crackpot ideas.
The best idea is the Rwanda, is the offshore processing, and that was what the Australians did, because offshore processing really puts means it destroys the business model of the gangsters, and that is what we need to do. I'm amazed Labour keeps saying they're going to do it, but they haven't yet done it. You need to take back control of the human rights stuff, and you need to get going. You need to revive the Rwanda deal or another deal like it. The other thing we should be doing,
go on,
is electricity. I'm becoming obsessed with electricity and the cost of electricity.
Yes,
and I think that I think what Kemi said about net zero the other day was very good. I think it's a good idea in principle, but we're going at it too fast. And I think that what our economy needs, and you look at the demands of AI, all the processing, we are going to need much, much more cheap electricity. And I think that we should get back to what we were doing when I was running it, which is to have many more nuclear power stations, and what we should say is, until we've got 25% of our baseload from nuclear, and until we've got 50-60% of reliable renewable energy that is not vulnerable to outages because of the wind or the sun or whatever, then we've got to accept that we're going to use hydrocarbons, and I mean coal, gas, or whatever. And I think the British people would buy that. I mean, the British people fundamentally want to be environmentally friendly. They really do. I mean, it's very, very strong.
They don't want to be ripped off, though.
But they don't want to be ripped off, and they don't want to feel that they're being made to suffer economically while other countries get away with it. We've made huge progress in net zero. Even in my time when I was running London, we massively decarbonised the economy. A lot of it, obviously, by offshoring industrial production of one kind or another. We've done a lot. I think that, if I was thinking now about what the country really needs, I think fix the immigration thing, and abundant cheap energy, abundant cheap electricity.
Okay,
that's what.
Just on that note, though, surely Ed Miliband's got to go.
Well, by definition, I mean he's a Labour cabinet minister, isn't he? I mean, of course.
just by his very existence, that means he has to resign. You come up with it.
I'm a Tory. I mean, in case you've forgotten.
Okay, you've come up with a couple
he should be removed from office forthwith.
Okay, you've come up with a couple of plans there. So I was going to ask you about, really, how did the Tories stave off Farage? Because that's the big issue at the moment. We've seen the local election result.
Look, you cannot, in politics, you can't hope to make yourself more compelling or attractive or dynamic or successful by having some sort of transplant operation. I mean, or merger or monkey glands infusion from another party. It doesn't work. Right. It doesn't work. And what I always used to say, and remember that reform was on zero when I was around, right? Zero.
Was Farage leading it then?
I can't remember.
I don't think. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I think he was actually. I don't know. Anyway, but the golden rule of life of politics is you're there to serve the voters, and you're there to think about what they want you to do. So you've got to be talking about them, about us, about our country, about the way forward, and if possible, not talking about your own political difficulties and your opponents and everything else. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Keep off that. Tories are going to recover. Tories are definitely going to recover. Of course they will, because I think in the end, the people of this country are going to be completely fed up by 2028, 9, whatever it is, with a high tax, high regulation, massively woke government that is taking us in completely the wrong direction. And so the goal is really wide open.
So you don't think we'll see Prime Minister Farage?
I don't, no. And I think that if you look at the direction of travel of the country at the moment, the case for conservatism is really overwhelming. I travel around quite a lot, and that's how I've flown in, especially to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Quite right. But there's so many Brits around the world. Always have been. There are more Brits per head. I think we have a bigger international diaspora than virtually any other OECD country, but certainly per capita. But it's colossal. But Dubai is now the 19th biggest British city in the world, right? It's bigger than Wolverhampton, far bigger, and it's because Dubai's smaller than Wolverhampton, but it's got more Brits than what I think, and you know it's wonderful that for Dubai, I guess, but it's also a bit sad for why are so many people leaving? I was a kid in the 1970s. You weren't, before most of our viewers were born. I remember the tyranny, the terror of the Labour government in the 1970s, and the tax rates, and people literally fleeing. And it's under Starmer, it's happening again. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I think my point is by 2029, people will have had enough of that. They'll want a new approach. I think they'll want to go back to the Conservatives, definitely.
Are you guaranteeing here on this show now that we will not see Boris Johnson in Parliament by the next?
As I always say, it's all in Unleashed, and I have about as much chance of returning to Parliament as I have of being decapitated by a frisbee, locked in a disused fridge, or reincarnated as an olive, or whatever else it was I used to say. So I think I've got a very productive life doing all sorts of things that really interest me. I spend a lot of time trying to campaign for Ukraine and to make sure that people's awareness and understanding of that is raised where it needs to be raised. But I think that I'm a proud, passionate Conservative, and I'm sure that we are going to come back. And I think Kemi's got every chance of turning this thing around. I really do.
Well, there you go. Huge amount to unpack there. We're going to do it a little bit later on, though, because, well, you won't want to miss the wisdom that he imparted on me. I'll reveal all in just a few minutes' time when I come back with all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's do it.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Whilst there's high pressure across the UK, bringing largely settled weather here, it's a different story over more southern parts of Europe. A fairly potent feature is pushing into parts of the Canary Islands towards Madeira as well, bringing some wet and windy weather as we go towards the weekend. Elsewhere, a fair few showery bursts of rain around. We've had some heavy thunderstorms affecting Italy. They've now pushed their way a little bit further southwards, could cause some further issues, turning a little bit drier for many as we go through the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead towards the next couple of days, it's going to be feeling much warmer, particularly across eastern areas. All towards sunshine for many, but it is still going to be fairly chilly through the overnight period. And the reason for this settled weather is all thanks to an area of high pressure slowly shifting its way eastwards, which means things are eventually going to start warming up for eastern parts. But back to this evening, we're going to see a mix of cloud and clear skies. And where we see the clear, prolonged skies, that's where temperatures are going to slip away, possibly even seeing some rural frost by the morning, potentially even some mist and fog too. So some areas just dipping below freezing, but for many, mid to low single figures. So a fairly chilly start for Friday, the end of the week. Potentially some cloud just drifting into the very far northwest of Scotland, perhaps bringing some light outbreaks of rain later. But for the majority of Scotland, a dry and bright start, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a dry and bright start to the day, and similar elsewhere across much of England and Wales. But it is going to be chilly, still potentially some mist and fog during the very early hours, but clearing quite readily through the course of the morning. And high pressure sticks around, so for many, we're going to see plenty of blue skies, particularly across central areas where they've had quite a cloudy afternoon this afternoon. And we could potentially see a fair bit of cloud just starting to creep into the very far northwest, some light outbreaks of rain later on into the afternoon. But for most, a dry, sunny day, feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 21 degrees Celsius. And you're particularly going to feel that in eastern areas where it's been quite chilly. Then for the start of the weekend, a fairly similar day. Lots of sunshine to come, but still a fair amount of cloud across the northwest with the chance of some light outbreaks of rain. And this theme pretty much continues for the rest of the weekend and into next week. Just need to keep an eye on Sunday. There is a chance we could see some thundery showers, but otherwise lots of warm sunshine to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody, to Patrick Christies Tonight. Let's have a good look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, shall we? I'm intrigued to see what they go off because it's been such a bumper news day. But we go for the eye. UK wins global race to shake off worst Trump trade tariffs. Their picture story there, well, there's two of them. It's Holy Smoke, the first American Pope, and then the other story there, of course, is a brave war veteran for VE Day. Let's whiz ourselves over to the Daily Telegraph. The picture story from Chicago to the Vatican. We've got the Pope there. I've got to guess because, again, I am on for an extra hour tonight because there's so much news. We're going to be talking to a papal expert. PM hands US a veto on China deals. So Trump credits Brexit for tariff-cutting trade agreement. Apparently, Keir Starmer has handed Donald Trump a veto on Chinese investment in Britain. That's quite interesting. We'll possibly return to that in a second with my panel. The Guardian, picture story again, new Pope. Then we've got evil will not prevail, first US Pope vows to build bridges. UK strikes trade deal, Labour MPs threaten to rebel over benefits cuts. That is quite an interesting story, actually. The Daily Mail I've got next here. US trade deal made by Brexit. There's also something on the front page here which says Trump's Champions League ambush. So I think we're going to have a little look into that and find out exactly what that means, Trump's Champions League ambush. But then let's just finally go to the Daily Express. UK shafted by Starmer's US trade deal. We cut our tariffs, America tripled theirs. Blast Tory leader Kemi Badenoch. OK, right. Well, look, let's be honest, most of it's about the trade deal, isn't it? So is Keir Starmer right to give Trump a veto on potential Chinese investment into the UK, do you think?
Well, I think this is really interesting because, of course, Keir Starmer has struck a very different chord, I think, from the previous government on China. He's been much more open to it. Rachel Reeves the same, Jonathan Reynolds, Trade Minister, have all been talking about how you can't cut China off. So now this happens. I think this is very interesting. Personally, I would want to move away from China. That just just been my personal opinion. I think they have huge tentacles into a lot of our industries, into our public sector. I think the Chinese influence in this country is quite insidious, actually, and there's been various reports into that suggesting precisely what I've just said. And of course, we've obviously taken away contracts from companies like Huawei, nuclear projects and so on and so forth. I think in the past we've given China too much power, and I was very concerned that the previous government was waking up to that. Then Starmer was going back on that. So I think this is fascinating.
Well,
I trust Trump more on China than I do Starmer, that's for sure.
There's an interesting contrast between the I paper and the Daily Express. So it's always important to analyse the differences in these front pages. The I paper, UK wins global race to shake off worst Trump trade tariffs. The Daily Express, UK shafted by Starmer's US trade deal. So you can't get much more different than that. Whose side are you on, Sean?
I mean, two things can be true at the same time, I imagine, if you look into the detail. But I just want to go back and talk about this China, this American veto. You should never give people control over our economy, because America will have to act for America, and if that's not in our best interests, they'll still do it anyway. Now, that may never come to pass, but if it does, we've given away a very powerful piece of control that we should try to maintain. And as much as America is a good trading partner as are, we're not the 51st state or whatever it is. We are a sovereign nation.
Governor Starmer.
Yeah,
when he doesn't come for Canada, he might come for us.
And we should be ploughing our own way in the world. So I would be worried about giving up too much control. But I qualify that statement with I don't quite know the detail.
Yeah. OK, well, I mean, there's more to come out, isn't there? No. I don't suppose you've managed to have a quick look at what this Trump Champions League...
So I've worked out why. It's because the deal was sealed last night during the Champions League, Arsenal Champions League match, where the Prime Minister had to leave watching his beloved Arsenal on the telly, not on a freebie before anybody says it. He was watching it on the telly. He was watching it on the telly, and so therefore it's been dubbed the Champions League trade deal.
I see, that's a bit of a stretch.
It's a massive stretch, but that's the explanation by the Daily Mail. But there we go.
Reputable paper, a very reputable paper. So OK, well, look, they've basically all gone off on this trade deal. President surprise call to Starmer during the Arsenal game. Yes, he said the picture stories, of course, are all the Pope. In the next hour, because I am running for another hour, we are going to be talking about the new Pope, in part anyway. There's much excitement in the office there. However, I just want to play you a little bit of a clip here, because I think it's something that might be quite interesting to talk about. So right at the end of my interview with Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, I did have time to just squeeze one final question to him and see what you make of this.
So I am going to be a father in a few months' time.
Congratulations.
I want some advice. Right.
Oh my God!
What's your advice for a new dad?
Do exactly what your wife tells you to do. my strong advice, just honestly, do no alternative instantly, and try and anticipate. I mean, I don't think men ever really get quite how much of an effort motherhood really is, and is my honest. I mean, having been through it quite a few times, not motherhood, obviously, but fatherhood. I think don't underestimate. Constantly think, how can I get points today? That's my advice to you.
Good. Yes, I did resist the urge to ask him exactly how many times he's done it, but there we go. So some parental advice from Boris Johnson. Was it worthwhile, do you think?
That sounds good to me. Every husband should do exactly what their wife tells them, I think. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
It's a recipe for a very happy marriage.
Yeah, there you go. So do exactly what the woman tells you, he says.
Sean, is that your secret?
I've got to say, in the very early years, in the beginning, when you first have a baby, it is a tremendous piece of work for your wife. And he's right, you should remember that. The recovery from giving birth, breastfeeding, and just understanding what motherhood impact's going to be on that particular woman involved is enormous. And any support you should give is all you can do. You just got to be on beck and call and do your best to support. He's right about that.
Yes, there's probably got to be a joke in there somewhere, Matthew, hasn't there, about Boris Johnson giving parenting advice.
I think it makes itself. I think it makes itself.
Look, we've only got about a minute or so left, so I want to tease ahead to something we're going to be talking about when we come back. We are going to be, we're going for another hour, right? So we're going to be having a look at VE Day. We're going to be having a look at the new Pope. We're going to look at this trade deal. And Boris Johnson as well. He gave me a little blueprint earlier, which we'll replay for you, of how he thinks the Conservatives can still win the next election. But just an interesting line on our new Pope here, Pope Leo the 14th. Eagle-eyed social media users have managed to go on a look at the Pope's tweets. Yes, you heard that right. The Pope's tweets, and the Pope has tweeted about Donald Trump and JD Vance in not particularly positive terms. Has he before? So yeah, I do think it's slightly unedifying though that the Pope has Twitter.
I must admit, when I read this, because I read some of the comments that he'd made, and he's clearly not much in favour, I don't think, of some things that Trump and Vance have been talking about. But I was quite surprised, because Francis didn't have Twitter, did he?
Yeah, but
this guy's younger.
But this is the whole point of this Pope.
He's only 69.
I mean, he's a sprightly Pope, 69, and he seems to be much more of the time, and that's probably why they select.
The best social media moment of the day was, I don't know if anybody saw this, but on Wikipedia, somebody got on there within seconds and just changed the entry. So his whole entry just read, "He is now Da Pope." It's spelled DA. Absolute classic.
Fantastic.
Obviously, the Vatican has an account, but I don't think he had one when he was a cardinal. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
but this guy's obviously had a Twitter account for a while.
Well, there we go. All right, well, we've got a bumper next hour coming your way on what has been one of the busiest news days of the year. Started with VE Day, then we had a bit of a bumper US-UK trade deal. We had Boris Johnson in Churchill's bunker. Then we've got a new Pope. I mean, goodness gracious me. Hey, also, find out what Germany have been doing, getting tough on illegal immigration. Why can't we do the same? I'll see you in just a couple of minutes' time.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead towards the next couple of days, it's going to be feeling much warmer, particularly across eastern areas, all towards sunshine for many, but it is still going to be fairly chilly through the overnight period. And the reason for this settled weather is all thanks to an area of high pressure slowly shifting its way eastwards, which means things are eventually going to start warming up for eastern parts. But back to this evening, we're going to see a mix of cloud and clear skies. And where we see the clear, prolonged skies, that's where temperatures are going to slip away, possibly even seeing some rural frost by the morning, potentially even some mist and fog too. So some areas just dipping below freezing, but for many, mid to low single figures. So a fairly chilly start for Friday, the end of the week. Potentially some cloud just drifting into the very far northwest of Scotland, perhaps bringing some light outbreaks of rain later. But for the majority of Scotland, a dry and bright start, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a dry and bright start to the day, and similar elsewhere across much of England and Wales. But it is going to be chilly, still potentially some mist and fog during the very early hours, but clearing quite readily through the course of the morning. And high pressure sticks around, so for many, we're going to see plenty of blue skies, particularly across central areas where they've had quite a cloudy afternoon this afternoon. And we could potentially see a fair bit of cloud just starting to creep into the very far northwest, some light outbreaks of rain later on into the afternoon. But for most, a dry, sunny day, feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 21 degrees Celsius. And you're particularly going to feel that in eastern areas where it's been quite chilly. Then for the start of the weekend, a fairly similar day. Lots of sunshine to come, but still a fair amount of cloud across the northwest with the chance of some light outbreaks of rain. And this theme pretty much continues for the rest of the weekend and into next week. Just need to keep an eye on Sunday. There is a chance we could see some thundery showers, but otherwise lots of warm sunshine to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next big winner on the road in this brand new Alnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. Imagine the fun you could have in this luxurious home from home worth over £67,000. We'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash to make your next getaway a great one. And it could be all yours. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS us to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 p.m. and this is Patrick Christies Tonight for a bonus hour.
I think that this country is, very fierce in its defence of democracy and freedom.
Well, you just heard there that the day started with Boris Johnson talking about Britain on VE Day, but then...
The grooming gang. I don't know quite why we don't have a proper national inquiry into it.
Well, he waded into the grooming gang scandal.
Don't we kind of do something really crackers like Trump and put a 500% tariff on all French cheese and wine until they stop the boats coming from Calais?
Came up with a novel solution to the small boats crisis.
He's part of this great network of human rights lawyers that is basically devoted to the idea that they should try to defeat UK immigration law.
He massively slags off and then...
The actual deal is a very conclusive one.
Really important deal. This is going to boost trade between and across our countries.
We got a UK-US trade deal, but is it any good? And as if that wasn't enough, we got a bit of white smoke. It's the first American Pope. But what do we know about him? How's he going to be? I'm going to take you to an expert to discuss all of this. He certainly doesn't seem to be the biggest fan of President Trump. And tonight, King Charles had a very special message for the nation on VE Day.
We unite to celebrate and remember with an unwavering and heartfelt gratitude the service and sacrifice of the wartime generation.
So, I mean, the King, the Pope, the US trade deal, Boris Johnson in a bunker, VE Day, all of this we thought called for an extra hour of, well, me and my wonderful panel. So we are here until midnight tonight, and it is the political commentator Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. bumper trade deals and illegal immigration. Next with your front pages.
Good evening, I'm Katie Bowen in the GBN newsroom. To the top story of this evening, Robert Prevost has been elected as Pope Leo XIV, becoming the first North American leader of the Catholic Church. The pontiff said, "Peace be with you all," as he made a Latin address, adding that this must be a church that builds bridges. White smoke rose from the roof of the Sistine Chapel after a group of 133 cardinal electors chose the new pontiff in the fourth round of voting in the conclave after it began yesterday afternoon. The 69-year-old from Chicago was only made Cardinal Bishop this year, with Vatican insiders describing him as the dark horse candidate who quietly rose to prominence days before the conclave. Reaction has been coming in from around the world, with US President Donald Trump saying he looks forward to meeting the first American Pope in what he calls a meaningful moment. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has said that this is a deeply profound moment of joy for Catholics in the United Kingdom and around the world. Elsewhere today, President Donald Trump has confirmed a first-of-its-kind trade deal between the US and the UK, with the president hailing it a historic day. During a phone call with the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, the US President said that the final details will be written up in the coming weeks, but explained that the deal will create an aluminium and steel trading zone and a pharmaceutical supply chain. Speaking at a press conference after the announcement, the Prime Minister said that the landmark deal will save thousands of British jobs, as car export tariffs will be reduced from 27.5% to 10%. The agreement is the first trade deal President Trump has struck in the wake of his global tariff war, and he added that there's no red tape.
The UK will reduce or eliminate numerous non-tariff barriers that unfairly discriminated against American products, but this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries, because it'll be really great for the UK also. So they're opening up the country. Their country is a little closed, and we appreciate that. They'll also be fast-tracking American goods through their customs process, so our exports go to a very, very quick form of approval, and there won't be any red tape. Things are going to move very quickly both ways.
His Majesty the King has addressed the nation to mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day. Speaking during a concert at Horse Guards Parade this evening, King Charles said that today we unite to celebrate and remember with an unwavering and heartfelt gratitude the service and sacrifice of the wartime generation who made that hard-fought victory possible. His Majesty went on to reference present conflict, saying we should also rededicate ourselves not only to the cause of freedom, but to renewing global commitments to restoring a just peace where there is war. A 2-minute national silence took place at midday today to commemorate the anniversary and to remember and thank those who fought for our freedom. And briefly to the sporting world, where Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United will face each other in the Europa League final. Manchester United beat Atletico Bilbao 7-1 on aggregate at Old Trafford to book their place in the final, while Tottenham secured a 5-1 aggregate victory over Bodo Glimt, making it an all-English Europa League final. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to a special bumper hour of Patrick Christies tonight. Look, we just thought that the news was so big today. We've had VE Day, we've had Boris Johnson in Winston Churchill's bunker, we've had a new Pope, we've had all sorts going on, haven't we? As well as a bumper trade deal, so we thought, well, we would roll on through. Let's start, though, by reminding you of all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, so you get a first look at it before anyone else. The Eye paper, we go, UK wins global race to shake off worst Trump trade tariffs. They describe it as a big win for car and steel industries, but fears that the US will continue to push for more hormone-treated beef and chlorinated chicken exports. I've got an idea. Don't buy it or eat it. You know, if it causes that much of a problem, just don't let it into your life. You know, there is that. Let's go to the Telegraph now. They've got the big picture story, of course, is the new Pope. From Chicago to the Vatican, they say. A little bit later on, I'm going to be talking to an expert when it comes to who this Pope is, what he stands for. Is he a progressive or a conservative? We've also got a story here. They've dug into the new trade deal, and it's PM hands US a veto on China deal. So apparently, Sir Keir Starmer has handed Donald Trump a veto on Chinese investment in Britain. But there's a story right at the bottom there, which I think will get people going. British troops could be forced on EU missions. So, British soldiers could be deployed on EU military missions as the price for joining the bloc's 150 billion euro rearmament programme. We'll return to that in a second. Let me whiz on to The Guardian for you now, though. Evil will not prevail. The first American Pope vows to build bridges. He has previously criticised the Trump administration over refugee policies, though, so I certainly hope we don't have another Welby on our hands here. But anyway, give him a chance, give him a chance. Labour MPs are also threatening to rebel over benefits cuts. And this is a fascinating one because more than 40 Labour MPs have warned the Prime Minister that if he goes ahead with disability cuts, that they're going to rebel over it. And I think especially after those local election results, it's surely only a matter of time before we start to see serious Labour rebellions. Let's go to the Daily Mail. US trade deal made by Brexit. They're calling it Trump's Champions League ambush because apparently the trade deal was signed off during Arsenal's Champions League game last night. Keir Starmer, of course, didn't miss much because Arsenal got spanked by PSG, despite the fact that Mikel Arteta said the best team lost. They didn't. But anyway, Keir Starmer struck an emergency trade deal with Donald Trump during the Champions League game. Their picture story. Again, the new Pope. Let's go to the Express now. And that is UK shafted by Starmer's US trade deal. They highlight the fact that we've cut our tariffs, but America has tripled theirs. That is a quote from Kemi Badenoch. They also say, we will never forget the royal family commemorating VE Day. I think I've got another paper for you here. I've got the Sun in front of me here. God bless American, they say. Robert of Chicago is the first US Pope. He was a surprise pick, and he takes the name Leo the 14th. Well, in the next section, we're going to be talking more about the Pope. So let's zone in for now on. I mean, the US trade deal obviously is the big noise, isn't it? We cut our tariffs. America tripled theirs. Sean, are they right to point this out within the Express?
I've said of these trade deals are complicated, and in one instance that could be right, and another it could be wrong. Two things could be right at the same time. But one of the things that I think people need to focus on, for instance, if you look at the auto trade, it might make manufacturing cars in this country more attractive than in mainland Europe because we cut a different deal with them. So if you're now, I don't know, BMW or VW, you might have to think, gosh, I'm going to have to build a plant in Britain because they can export the cars to America more cheaply. That's the kind of thing we can benefit from.
Yeah, I just love the contrast. This is what I love doing, right? When you see these front pages side by side. So you take the Daily Express, UK shafted by Starmer's US trade deal, and then you look at the Eye, UK wins global race to shake off worst Trump trade tariffs. But what's interesting here is we have former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser with us. Of the left, I would have thought, traditionally more of a fan of Starmer. You are not a massive fan of this trade deal, are you?
I think it's got the best in the circumstances, but I don't think it's transformative to the economy. But it was necessary to reach this agreement. And I think it is very good news for the car industry.
OK, but what do you want to see? I mean, are you worried about hormone-treated beef? Is that what?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm glad that they've actually stood firm on various issues. Hormone-treated beef, I am a little bit worried about, but at least we're not having the chlorinated chicken. And
what was going to pin you down and ram it down your throat?
But you don't know because you don't know.
Yes,
you don't know what
you know.
You don't walk into. You know what it's like. 3 o'clock in the morning, you walk into the chicken shop. You don't say, "Oh, is my chicken chlorinated, kind sir?" So look, I mean, I think and And crucially, we haven't given in on the digital services tax, which was this tax that we thought we might have to sacrifice.
The shafting, if you will allow me, is that beef tariffs have been reduced to 0, which is bad for our farmers, Suzanne.
Yeah, I think this is my concern about this deal, is it's bad for our farmers. They're already struggling massively thanks to Rachel Reeves' family farm tax. You know, America really does put its farmers first. I think it recognises it needs food security. I'm afraid this government doesn't, so that worries me. I've also just been looking a little bit more closely about this idea that the PM has handed the US a veto on China.
No, this is the Telegraph.
This is in the Telegraph. And you know, Sean was saying earlier, it's not right. We should be a sovereign nation. We should do what we want to do and not have to be subject to veto. But I have to say, it's a misleading headline in the Telegraph. It's not really a veto. It's just that Washington will flag up any concerns it might have about Chinese companies buying up key infrastructure. Well, that's fine. That's a friendly thing to do, as far as I'm concerned. And I hope Keir Starmer would listen.
I suppose that's an additional intelligence sharing.
Yeah, and I think that's actually across party. That's happened over the last few years. We've all decided that we don't want, I can never pronounce it, that Chinese firm that was in our... Yes. Yes. We could have 3 different pronunciations.
And I'd have to say, now we've got some detail, that's correct, because if you saw what they did to the British steel industry, one could definitely be of the opinion it was a deliberate attempt to wreck our ability to produce virgin steel by the Chinese government. It could
buy British steel, run it down, threaten to close down your blast furnaces, not invest anything, reject a government offer of a loan. Yeah, absolutely. They deliberately ran it down, I think.
Look, like I said, the 2 big stories on all of the front pages tomorrow are Pope and trade deal. Well, we're doing the Pope next, and we've done the trade deal quite comprehensively now. Can I just zone in on what's... We're sticking with the Daily Telegraph here, and it's a nib at the bottom. But I think it's probably on another day, it would be probably their splash, actually. I think you definitely lead with this on another day. British troops could be forced on EU missions. So I'll give you some detail on this now. British soldiers could be sent on EU military missions as the price for joining the bloc's €150 billion rearmament programme. The deployments are set out in a leaked draft of the new Defence and Security Partnership. It's being negotiated as the centrepiece of the UK-EU summit in London on May the 19th. Sean, on May the 19th, or the 20th, are we going to get our Prime Minister and his great friend, he's always telling us what a great friend she is, Ursula von der Leyen, standing before us saying that British troops could fight in an EU army?
So, to be clear, what about NATO? We're in NATO, and that meant that we could be fighting somebody else's war or defending one of our allies. So it probably isn't as egregious as it looks, but the devil will be in the detail. What we have to do is rebuild our defence capability. For all Trump's talk with Russia, what he did was embarrassing the EU leaders, because he was the only person who said, let's end the war. We need that capability ourselves. So this is part of addressing that notion, but we'll have to see, because it will be hard to say to the British military at this point, we'll want you to fight an EU.
This is yet another... I mean, look, potentially, we have to wait and see, obviously, and they say, oh, they'll be sent on civilian missions, but, I mean, either way, I think you're putting UK troops potentially in a riskier situation there, really. But this was one of the things we were told, oh, it's never going to happen with European Union. It'll never happen, will it?
Just thinking, you know, Nick Clegg stood up in that famous EU referendum debate with Nigel Farage and said, talk of the EU army is a dangerous fantasy. Those are the words he used. And yet here we are now potentially having to send British soldiers on EU military missions.
Yeah, but the world has changed since then. I think an EU army is a terrible notion. And what about NATO? We have NATO, but the world is different.
OK, Matthew, is this something that you think that Keir Starmer genuinely feels he could get away with?
Well, if you look at it, what it is part of a deal to ensure that the UK isn't cut out of the EU's rearmament programme. So we've seen with Germany, we're going to see huge increase in military spending across Europe. It may be forced into it by Trump. And obviously that's a big opportunity for British companies, a big opportunity for British workers, but not if we're cut out of those deals. So it looks like this is part of those negotiations.
All right, well, just very quickly, and we're not going to have time to get stuck into this in much detail, but I did want to raise it with you at home or listening on the radio or wherever you are. It's not on any of the front pages, but it's stories that are inside the book on a couple of tomorrow's newspapers. And on his first day in office, Germany's new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has scrapped Angela Merkel's open border policy. It's gone. He's issued orders to reject undocumented migrants arriving at all borders. So if you are an undocumented migrant arriving in Germany now, you will be turned away. The new coalition government has also agreed to enable deportations to Syria and suspend family reunions. I mean, this is big stuff, right, from Germany, massive stuff. Germany has followed the lead of other EU countries like Denmark, who in 2018 introduced so-called anti-ghetto laws to limit the number of non-Western residents in housing areas. And in 2021, they began permanently revoking residency permits for Syrian refugees. But just last year, Denmark granted the lowest number of asylum requests in recent years, just 863. And I heard something this morning that apparently in Denmark, if you arrive there either illegally or as part of an asylum process and you are in possession of things like jewellery or anything valuable, they take it off you and presumably sell it and put that towards the cost of your upkeep in that country.
And it's a Social Democrat government, it's a Labour government.
Yes.
But would our Labour government do the same? Because
that is the question.
Because part of the problem we have is the fact that we have our public discourse around these issues have made people feel like if you talk about them, you're racist, and the Labour government and the left are being a big part of that. And this particular change by Germany puts us at greater risk. Again, these are organised gangs. They will go back and they will say, we can only go to Britain now, so anybody we were sending anywhere else, let's bring to Britain. And the big thing is, this started when Angela Merkel said she's inviting 1 million refugees, a million immigrants to Europe, and that's when the problem started, and now Germany are turning it around.
The German people have been very angry about that policy. I mean, it's been simmering away for a long time. There was a time when I was travelling between Germany and the UK quite a lot, and the difference, you could see the difference in Hamburg where I was travelling to. The demographics completely changed.
Well, those are how two EU countries are going at it. Meanwhile, over here, record numbers across the channel. Anyway, loads more coming your way. Let's be honest, the other big story on tomorrow's newspaper front pages is this, isn't it? A shock, a papal shock. Cardinal Robert Prevost has been elected Pope Leo XIV, becoming the very first American in history to lead the Catholic Church. But already, some controversial old social media posts have emerged. I'll tell you all about them next.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I mean, it's an absolute first for science in the UK. Of course, it's not actually the first in the world. Actually, there have been 65 children born through womb transplants. But not only is this wonderful for the family concerned, and you know, what a sister, what an elder sister to donate her womb. But there's 15,000 women in the UK who suffer from this Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuster-Hauser syndrome, where they might have healthy ovaries, but unfortunately the womb doesn't work. Real ray of hope for them. The real hero here, I think, as well as the sister, is Professor Richard Smith from the Imperial NHS Trust. He spent 26 years developing this, started a charity, Womb Transplant UK. Wow. So this was all paid for through his charity. Doctors gave up their time for free. 17 hours of surgery, not for the faint-hearted, but lovely result.
And the baby is named after the sister, Amy, who donated her womb, and her middle name is Isabel, who's after the surgeon who essentially transplanted that womb. And to do that, you had to connect all of the tiny little blood vessels with minuscule stitches. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
It really is.
It is incredible. But, Anna, I put it to you, what would you say to people who would say, what is the point of this? Because you're not going to be able to provide this on the NHS. We can't afford to.
Well, as I said, that was one of my first thoughts, I have to say, when I was looking through this. And the fact that this professor has spent 26 years and actually started a charity. There are going to be a few more of these coming, but they're not going to be funded by the NHS. They are going to be funded by charity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to a special extended version of Patrick Christies Tonight. We thought there was so much news, we had to do an extra hour. And one of the main reasons why there was so much news was because, well, we've got a new Pope. And in fact, it's on the front of every single national newspaper. Cardinal Robert Prevost has been elected as Pope Leo XIV, making history as the first North American to lead the Catholic Church. In his first public address, he offered a message of peace and basically emphasised the need for a church that, quote, builds bridges. However, it seems the new Pope is not the biggest fan of the Trump administration, calling J.D. Vance's stance on immigration wrong, and retweeted a post that read, "There is nothing remotely Christian about a policy that takes children away from their parents and houses them in cages." Just to say that, really, he should have been saying that to Barack Obama, because that's what Barack Obama did. So there we go. But anyway, maybe sets the scene. I don't know if you might be able to just bring up one of the front pages. I think the Sun's front page, God bless American, white smoke for the new pontiff. That's what they're going at there. It's possibly the best picture story of the Pope. But I'm joined now by the founding member of Catholic Voices, Ed Rennie. Ed, thank you very much. Tell you why I needed a Rennie when the white smoke came out of the conclave earlier on. But there we go. OK, tell me everything we need to know about this Pope. Is he conservative? Is he liberal? Where is he on key issues?
Well, he's very much an unknown, and that was what was most fascinating in a way about when he walked out on the balcony, was a lot of Catholics' reaction would be, well, we don't know who he is, because he's been bishop in Peru, and there he was, actually, contrary to what you were displaying earlier, very discreet when it came to the media. So quite unlike Francis in that way. So not, speaking off the cuff all the time. He was quite discreet. These tweets, on the other hand, are a little bit different, but that may be the case where it's like, well, it's one thing to say that you're a bishop working under the Pope and you're being supportive of the then Pope's take on J.D. Vance, but it's different when you're Pope. Now, as to liberal and conservative, these terms are useful, but we've got to remember that a liberal in the Catholic Church or a progressive in the Catholic Church can be quite far from a liberal or progressive out in the rest of the world.
Where do we think he is on?
Same for conservatives.
Well, where do we think he is on things like gay marriage, for example?
So he was mildly, but not strongly supportive of what Pope Francis did in terms of blessing same-sex couples. So he was much more circumspect in what he said about that. So he was quite clearly saying, look, this has to be tailored by local bishops. They have to interpret in the way that is appropriate for their national cultural context. And that's quite important because obviously you want to take a different approach or distinct approach to homosexuality if you're in an African country and an African bishop, or if you're the bishop in California, you have to take a different political approach. So he was much more kind of attuned to that. And that's what's hopeful about him as Pope, is that he's going to be more nuanced, more sure-footed, more careful when it comes to these matters of interacting with the politics of the world.
OK, you are actually now just looking at live shots of Vatican City. I mean, it was electric really earlier when we got the first sight of that white smoke, and you could see all the crowds running there, and then it's all eyes on the balcony, isn't it? And the Pope emerges. How significant is it that he's American? I mean, we're seeing quite a lot at the moment, quite a few stats coming out of Western Europe. look, I would imagine in America as well, although I'm not entirely sure, but definitely Western Europe, of a bounce in Catholicism amongst younger people, maybe looking for more tradition and morality in some very chaotic times, for example. Is this a deliberate attempt, do you think, to corner off the Anglosphere and really solidify the church there?
I don't think so. I mean, what's interesting about Provost is that, Leo, is that his mother was Spanish and his father was mixed French and Italian. So although he's from Chicago and we might have some preconceptions about what an American from Chicago would be like, obviously he does have that kind of, you know, mostly Latin, Southern European ethnic background. And obviously that comes with... And then, of course, he was, because he's speaks Spanish and Italian and everything else, but that's part, his Spanish roots were one of the reasons he was sent to Peru and was bishop there for 11 years, having previously been on mission there. But I think, yeah, I don't think there's a strategic thing about squaring off versus America versus Europe or anything like that. I'm not sure about that. I mean, the significance of him being a US Pope is that it's never happened before, and it was, prior to him, expected that if it was going to be a US-based, an American Pope in that sense, that they would be more conservative. But he's still too subtle to pin down on that. He's not as conservative as a couple of the other favourites.
Ed, could I ask you, sorry, just because we're a little bit pressed for time, but you know, you are the founding member of Catholic Voices.
Founding member, yes.
A founding member, yeah. Do you want someone really conservative? Do you think most Catholics want someone really conservative?
I think most practicing Catholics would like someone who's very, very what would be termed orthodox, who keeps to the orthodox ethics, but also some of the liturgical practices, not closed off to new liturgical practices. But yes, so in that sense, and that translates as being conservative in the terminology that you're using. Yes, in that sense. But of course, the most important thing is not to get distracted by things like the arguments over climate alarmism or the arguments over mass immigration.
Yeah.
The thing is to preach Jesus Christ and the love of God and to focus relentlessly on that and invite people to the church. That's what all the congregations, all the faithful want. They don't want distractions on other matters.
On other matters,
they want to be supported in their work in outreach and bringing the gospel to the people of the world.
Well, Ed, thank you very much. Absolute pleasure. Take care. It's been a big night for you. That's one of the founding members of Catholic Voices. All the very best. Ed Rennie, just quickly want to bring my panel in now. You know, for all of that talk about we want to keep it very pious. I mean, the Daily Mail's front page has gone for tennis-playing White House critic is first American Pope. So they've just sexed it up immediately, haven't they? Really? Look, do you think that really what the Catholic world's crying out for now is someone conservative and orthodox? We don't need another Welby, do we?
Well, I don't think we do. I mean, just on his comments about what he said on Twitter about Trump and Vance, you know, it could have been a lot worse. At least he didn't call him a tyrant, a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, which, of course, is what David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, called Trump. So I think, and Trump managed to meet with David Lammy very calmly and respectfully, so I'm sure Trump won't have any problems with this Pope whatsoever. What the Catholic Church wants, I don't know. I'm not a Catholic. I can't really comment on that. I think it's critical what Ed Rennie said. This Pope is a bit of an unknown. We're not quite sure where he's coming from. There might be something in his name. He's taken the name Leo XIV. The last Leo XIII was around when Napoleon was alive, so we're going back quite some time. But he was considered to be the social justice warrior of his day. So maybe he's going that way. We don't know.
Well, we are covering all of the front pages here, in case you couldn't tell. But we also made the news tonight here at GB News with the interview that I did earlier on with Boris Johnson.
You don't think we'll see Prime Minister Farage?
I don't, no.
So, when I come back, my wonderful panel are going to be picking apart Boris Johnson's comments, which is that Kemi Badenoch is doing a good job. He's definitely not returning to frontline politics. He doesn't think we're going to see a Prime Minister Nigel Farage, but he also sets out his vision on how he thinks the Conservatives can turn it around. So, stay tuned for all of that.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun. Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst there's high pressure across the UK, bringing largely settled weather here, it's a different story over more southern parts of Europe. A fairly potent feature is pushing into parts of the Canary Islands towards Madeira as well, bringing some wet and windy weather as we go towards the weekend. Elsewhere, a fair few showery bursts of rain around. We've had some heavy thunderstorms affecting Italy. They've now pushed their way a little bit further southwards, could cause some further issues, turning a little bit drier for many as we go through the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead towards the next couple of days, it's going to be feeling much warmer, particularly across eastern areas. Wall-to-wall sunshine for many, but it is still going to be fairly chilly through the overnight period. And the reason for this settled weather is all thanks to an area of high pressure slowly shifting its way eastwards, which means things are eventually going to start warming up for eastern parts. But back to this evening, we're going to see a mix of cloud and clear skies. And where we see the clear, prolonged skies, that's where temperatures are going to slip away, possibly even seeing some rural frost by the morning, potentially even some mist and fog too. So some areas just dipping below freezing, but for many, mid to low single figures. So a fairly chilly start for Friday, the end of the week. Potentially some cloud just drifting into the very far northwest of Scotland, perhaps bringing some light outbreaks of rain later. But for the majority of Scotland, a dry and bright start, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a dry and bright start to the day, and similar elsewhere across much of England and Wales. But it is going to be chilly, still potentially some mist and fog during the very early hours, but clearing quite readily through the course of the morning. And high pressure sticks around, so for many, we're going to see plenty of blue skies, particularly across central areas where they've had quite a cloudy afternoon this afternoon. And we could potentially see a fair bit of cloud just starting to creep into the very far northwest, some light outbreaks of rain later on into the afternoon. But for most, a dry, sunny day, feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 21 degrees Celsius. And you're particularly going to feel that in eastern areas where it's been quite chilly. Then for the start of the weekend, a fairly similar day. Lots of sunshine to come, but still a fair amount of cloud across the northwest with the chance of some light outbreaks of rain. And this theme pretty much continues for the rest of the weekend and into next week. Just need to keep an eye on Sunday. There is a chance we could see some thundery showers, but otherwise lots of warm sunshine to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Patrick Christies Tonight. It is a bonus hour, and the reason being is because it was such a big news day. We did manage to make the news, though. We've been doing all of your front pages, but earlier today, I sat down with the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Well, stood up, technically, with him, really. But we spoke about the Conservatives, Nigel Farage, his own future. It was a big interview, this, and it was in the Battle of Britain bunker, where Churchill sat and masterminded the defeat of the Nazis. Let's just remind ourselves of some of his key lines.
Tories are going to recover. Tories are definitely going to recover. Of course they will, because I think in the end, the people of this country are going to be completely fed up by 2028, 9, whatever it is, with a high tax, high regulation, massively woke government that is taking us in completely the wrong direction. And so the goal is really wide open.
So you don't think we'll see Prime Minister Farage?
I don't, no. And I think that if you look at the direction of travel of the country at the moment, the case for conservatism is really overwhelming. I travel around quite a lot, and that's how I've flown in, especially to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Quite right. But there's so many Brits around the world. Always have been. Always have been. There are more Brits per head. I think we have a bigger international diaspora than virtually any other OECD country, but certainly per capita. But it's colossal. But Dubai is now the 19th biggest British city in the world, right? It's bigger than Wolverhampton, far bigger. And it's because Dubai's smaller than Wolverhampton, but it's got more Brits than what I think. And you know, it's wonderful that for Dubai, I guess, but it's also a bit sad for why are so many people leaving? I was a kid in the 1970s. You weren't, before most of our viewers were born. I remember the tyranny, the terror of the Labour government in the 1970s, and the tax rates, and people were literally fleeing. And it's under Starmer, it's happening again. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I think my point is by 2029, people will have had enough of that. They'll want a new approach. I think they'll want to go back to the Conservatives, definitely.
Are you guaranteeing here on this show now that we will not see Boris Johnson in Parliament by the next?
As I always say, it's all in Unleashed, and I have about as much chance of returning to Parliament as I have of being decapitated by a frisbee, locked in a disused fridge, or reincarnated as an olive, or whatever else it was I used to say. So I think I've got a very productive life doing all sorts of things that really interest me. I spend a lot of time trying to campaign for Ukraine and to make sure that people's awareness and understanding of that is raised where it needs to be raised. But I think that I'm a proud, passionate Conservative, and I'm sure that we are going to come back. And I think Kemi's got every chance of turning this thing around. I really do.
OK, so he thinks that Kemi is one of the best minds that the Conservative Party has in this current crop. He says that if she wants to win the next election, she needs to, well, basically turn the boats back and focus entirely on getting us cheap electricity. He says there will be no Prime Minister Farage. Suzanne?
Well, the bookies disagree with him. I mean, Farage's popularity at the bookmakers is absolutely shot up. He's, 13 points ahead of Labour now in the latest polling. Yeah. So unless he seriously makes a mess of it, Prime Minister Farage is looking to me like a very real possibility.
Sean, do you agree with him that the plan, the blueprint for the Tories turning this around is turn the boats back, get everyone cheap electricity and energy?
I'd say turn the boats back, cheap less energy, but housing is dragging the economy down, it's dragging people's personal finances down. As it comes to Kemi, he's right. She is a very, very sharp political mind. She's what the country needs. Prime Minister Farage is not a fantasy, but it's further away than people think because he hasn't taken on Labour in their heartland. Make no mistake, Labour's heartland's in the cities. It won't be as easy as it was in the shires.
That's an interesting point. OK, so, well, I'll put that to you, Matthew. But also, to be fair, that does tie in with what is on the front page of The Guardian, which is Labour MPs threaten to rebel over benefits cuts. So we're seeing the Tory party at the moment in the doldrums. We're seeing Nigel Farage on the rise. That latest opinion poll puts him 13 points clear of Labour. And we're now seeing Labour, Keir Starmer, being attacked from his own MPs, 40 of them looking to rebel over the disability cuts. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, just before I come on to that, can I just say, I thought denial was a river, but it's actually Boris Johnson's approach. I mean, he's denying Nigel Farage as Prime Minister is a perfectly possibility, a perfectly real possibility, and the Tory party, just like the Labour Party, needs to understand that and wake up to that. On this is one of Labour's problems. This is an interesting, normally it's the usual suspects, the people who are in what's called the campaign group, the hard left of the Labour Party who signed up for this. I actually went through the list earlier of people who signed up for this, and it includes people from the home counties, MPs from the home counties, who probably have quite low numbers of benefit claimants. The danger for Keir Starmer now is because the political momentum is slipping, it's slipped away from him. Does that mean Labour MPs now feel, and there are a lot of them, now feel that they can, plough their own furrow on issues that matter to them, even if it's against party policy? And that's where we end up with the chaos that we saw with the 5 families, etc.
What were the 5 families? Do you remember that? Mark Francois Leone, the leader of the 5 families. Anyway, so this is a story that more than 40 Labour MPs have warned the Prime Minister that planned disability cuts are impossible to support. They've called for a pause and a change in direction. They are from both the left and the right of the party, as Matthew was saying there. And this is the first whiff of Labour MPs going, hang on a minute, actually, Sir Keir, you're not that popular. I'm not going to keep lining up behind you.
Yeah. But do you know what Keir Starmer's answer to those MPs? Then what? We have a country that is very, very expensive to run. Something needs to give, and Keir Starmer's picked that. The Labour Party are trying to have their cake and eat it too. Right, they can't. One or the other is going to have to be done. But what Keir Starmer demonstrated very early on in his prime ministerial time, he's ruthless when pushed. And those 5 MPs who thought they could vote against him and not lose the whip, he showed them. It'd be interesting to see if these 40 MPs are willing to take him on with the massive majority he has. And this leads me to something that Farage says. Farage is good at politics. I'm not so sure he understands governance yet, and he should look at what Keir Starmer's going to have to do to understand how he's going to need to control his own party. The Conservatives he has inherited, they have an independent streak, which could become a problem for him as well.
Absolutely.
Suzanne, what do you think of this first real whiff of a Labour rebellion? Bear in mind, it's worth noting they didn't rebel over the farmers' tax, did they? They didn't rebel over winter fuel payments for pensioners. They haven't rebelled over a few things now that I think many people would regard as being relatively unpalatable for the traditional left. Well, now, front page of The Guardian, rebellion.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, while you've got these Labour MPs threatening to rebel over the cuts, you've got other half of the country saying we're paying too much out in welfare, it's got to be cut. If you back down on this, Keir Starmer, I'm never going to vote for you again because I'm sick to death of my taxes going to people. We've just known that the illegal migrant boatmen bill has just gone up to £15 billion now, and everybody's really angry about that. So hard-working people sick to death of seeing their taxes actually being frittered away. So this is a big test for them.
All right, OK. Well, look, hey, coming up, the 2 other stories on all of the front pages are obviously, the trade deal. Kemi Badenoch slams Starmer's US trade deal, says that it shafts Britain. And, of course, the other one is VE Day. Yes, and we've got a couple of bits and bobs to talk about that as well. I hope you did commemorate VE Day wherever you are. All of that is coming your way next. Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christies Tonight show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christies Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christies Tonight. So much news to get through this evening. That's why we're doing an extra hour. Across all of the front pages is, of course, this historic and comprehensive trade deal, which was agreed between the UK and the US earlier today, with Sir Keir Starmer saying it proved to the world that Britain is open for business. However, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has said the deal has shafted Britain. She noted that UK tariffs on the US were 5.1% and are now 1.8%, whilst US tariffs on the UK were 3.4% and are now the standard 10%, the rate that is applied to all countries. The newspapers have greeted it very differently. The Daily Express says we've been shafted. The iPaper says it's a huge win because we've won the race to get the first trade deal. Look, what's really going on here? Well, I'm joined by American political commentator Lee Cohen. Lee, thank you very much. Hey, tremendous to see you. Thank you very, very much. Are the Americans happier than the Brits?
Well, Patrick, I'm so delighted to be with you today. What a historic day it was. We celebrate the 80th anniversary of VE Day. The world elected for the first time an American Pope, and then this extraordinary trade deal. I mean, Patrick, as an American who cares deeply about Britain, I am thrilled that Trump's US-UK trade tariff plan, enabled by Brexit, positions Britain as the first country to secure relief from Trump's April 2025 tariffs, bypassing EU protectionist barriers. Patrick, this framework is not only a win for Trump's America and Brexit, it's victory for freedom trade and our stalwart British-American bond.
Yeah, so, I mean, what do you make of the fact that you have done rather better at this trade deal than we have, though, as our leader of the opposition points out? We cut our tariffs, but America have tripled theirs. Is this the art of the deal?
Well, I don't know. Tariff-free export of Rolls-Royce jet engines and plane parts alongside a proposed US-UK aerospace technology understanding drove a 4.5 share surge for Rolls-Royce today. Similarly, shares of Aston Martin soared 14% after the trade deal was announced. I would say it's a win-win on both sides. And, you know, the benefits for the United Kingdom are huge, including reduced U.S. tariffs on key exports, economic stability amid global trade tensions, political victory for UK leadership, obviously vindication of Brexit, and a message to the world on the heels of a very exciting India trade deal that, you know, Britain's economy is important and a global force.
OK. Well, Lee, this is all strong stuff, and I think does solidify the special relationship. Do you remember Barack Obama? If we voted for Brexit in Britain, we'd be at the back of the queue. Well, you know what? Trump has put us at the front of the queue, and it is an absolute pleasure. Lee, thank you very much. It's short and sweet this evening, but we massively appreciate it, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Lee Cohen there, American political commentator. All the very best, my good man. Now, I just wanted to play you out with this, because the other big story, of course, everywhere today, is the fact that it's the 80th anniversary of VE Day. And here is our King delivering a message to the nation.
Unite to celebrate and remember with an unwavering and heartfelt gratitude the service and sacrifice of the wartime generation.
OK, so I think King Charles kind of got the tone right, really, didn't he? Just round us off, really, but I suppose, sure, what a special day in British history.
A very special day. It's important to young people. I go to university campuses, I see a lot of agitating against our history, and they should remember who fought to give them the right to agitate in the first place.
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely right. Very, very good point. Yes, you know, King Charles there saying our unwavering and heartfelt gratitude. That absolutely sums it up, doesn't it? Greater love hath no man than he laid down his life for his country.
He told a nice little anecdote as well about his mother, who our late Queen, who when we won the war, said that she went out and walked amongst the crowds, I believe. Yeah. And then there was singing until 2 a.m. in the morning. Bed at 3. He made a joke. He says he doesn't think he'll quite make it that late this evening. I think what I'm really pleased about is how actually the anniversary has gripped the country's imagination. And I think that you have seen people of different generations, such a wide range of events. And of course, we've got a victory in Japan Day, VJ Day coming up, which we must never forget, because sometimes people who fought in that conflict felt a bit forgotten, and we must make sure they're not forgotten when it comes to marking that day too. Absolutely spot on. I know that we will be making sure that we do mark it properly here. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much to our wonderful panel for staying for this extra hour as well. Pleasure. And thank you for everybody who's been watching or listening in. And thank you to everyone who's been tuning in throughout the course of the day as well. This is just one of those days today where, frankly, it all happens at once, doesn't it? VE Day, you've got Boris in Churchill's bunker, you've got the Pope, you've got the trade deals, you've got all of this stuff. So, look, thank you very, very much, everybody. I'll be back live tomorrow in the studio at 9 p.m. with my live studio audience, so I hope to see as many of you as possible there. Next up is GBN Tonight, a replay from earlier this evening with Martin Daubney. That's after your weather. Good night.
Great.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead towards the next couple of days, it's going to be feeling much warmer, particularly across eastern areas. Wall-to-wall sunshine for many, but it is still going to be fairly chilly through the overnight period. And the reason for this settled weather is thanks to an area of high pressure slowly shifting its way eastwards, which means things are eventually going to start warming up for eastern parts. But back to this evening, we're going to see a mix of cloud and clear skies. And where we see the clear, prolonged skies, that's where temperatures are going to slip away, possibly even seeing some rural frost by the morning, potentially even some mist and fog too. So some areas just dipping below freezing, but for many, mid to low single figures. So a fairly chilly start for Friday, the end of the week. Potentially some cloud just drifting into the very far northwest of Scotland, perhaps bringing some light outbreaks of rain later. But for the majority of Scotland, a dry and bright start, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a dry and bright start to the day, and similar elsewhere across much of England and Wales. But it is going to be chilly, still potentially some mist and fog during the very early hours, but clearing quite readily through the course of the morning. And high pressure sticks around, so for many, we're going to see plenty of blue skies, particularly across central areas where they've had quite a cloudy afternoon this afternoon. And we could potentially see a fair bit of cloud just starting to creep into the very far northwest, some light outbreaks of rain later on into the afternoon. But for most, a dry, sunny day, feeling warm in the sunshine, highs of around 21 degrees Celsius. And you're particularly going to feel that in eastern areas where it's been quite chilly. Then for the start of the weekend, a fairly similar day. Lots of sunshine to come, but still a fair amount of cloud across the northwest with the chance of some light outbreaks of rain. And this theme pretty much continues for the rest of the weekend and into next week. Just need to keep an eye on Sunday. There is a chance we could see some thundery showers, but otherwise lots of warm sunshine to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next big winner on the road in this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. Imagine the fun you could have in this luxurious home from home worth over £67,000. We'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash to make your next getaway a great one. And it could be all yours. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christies tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christies tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good evening to you and welcome to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. And we're leading, of course, with the huge breaking news story tonight about habeas papam. Of course, the College of Cardinals have elected for the first time historically a North American Pope, Cardinal Robert Prevost, who'll be known as Pope Leo XIV. Now, what does this mean for the Catholic Church and the world, and indeed for the United States of America? And talking of which, earlier on today, the UK and the US agreed an historic new trade deal, swerving those Trump tariffs and boosting Britain's car industry, or did it? And isn't it funny that it's Remainer Starmer who's reaping that massive Brexit bonus? And historian Tessa Dunlop spoke with one of Britain's last surviving Bevin boys, young men who thought they'd be sent to the front lines only to be conscripted into the coal mines instead, under threat of prison. Now, their Labour kept the country running, but their vital wartime contribution went unrecognised until 1995. Fantastic story. Welcome to the show. Well, what a day for breaking news. We started with that historic trade deal between the UK and the USA. So good for both countries, said Donald Trump. The UK is our greatest ally, the first of many deals. But was it a good deal for the UK. I'll have all the details on that. And of course, historically, a new pontiff also elected. Two massive stories, one great show. Get in touch with your views. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do it. But on this historic day, let's get your headlines with Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good evening. Your top stories at 7:02. As you've been hearing, Robert Prevost has been elected as Pope Leo XIV, becoming the first North American leader of the Catholic Church. In his first public words, Pope Leo XIV said, "Peace be with you all," as he made a Latin address, adding that